Chapter 1. The Letter. The Armed Detective Agency has been keeping an eye open for the Port Mafia. The organisation of the night has long been quiet. Even the President is worried about what they might be conspiring. Okay, no, I cannot do this anymore, Yoshino said, standing up from her desk. The Port Mafia has been quiet for almost a month at this point, and there's something extremely suspicious about this. She crosses her arms, staring at the others. Yoshino's got a point. Something's wrong, Tanizaki says, agreeing with the woman. It's the Port Mafia. Who knows what they're doing? Plus, there's not much we could do about it. There's not much we could do about it anyways, Kyoka says, shrugging her shoulders. You can't deny that it isn't suspicious though, Kunikita said, putting a finger to his chin, thinking. They go back and forward, discussing about what might be going on, the only two people staying out of this conversation being Rumpo and Dazai. Dazai knew something was wrong weeks ago. He had many tabs on the Port Mafia, mostly to mess with Chuuya, and even those had been inactive. Dazai also knew Chuuya hadn't returned home once in the past month. Dazai having broken into his apartment more than once, leaving coded letters for Chuuya leaving coded letters for Chuuya, never being taken the next time he decides to stop by. While he didn't know what was wrong, he knew something was, and he had a feeling it had to all do with him. Pulling Dazai out from his thoughts, Rumpo speaks out, causing everyone to become silent. I'm very sure we'll find out what they're up to soon, he says, a not very pleased appearance on his face. The next day, the Armed Detective Agency was on high alert due to Rumpo's potential warning, but the detectives never expected what was going to happen. While almost everyone was working, there was a knock on the door. Kenji stood up excited, assuming it to be a client. I'll get it, he said cheerfully, making his way towards the door. He opened it and He opened excitedly, replying, "Welcome to the Armed Detective Agency. How can we help you?" Only after he finished speaking did he realize who was at the door. "Hello, we have a letter to deliver," one of the people at the door said, coughing. The other quickly gave the letter to Kenji. "The letter is to be delivered to your president," the other said, more quietly than the first. Atsushi peeked his head around the corner to see who was there, but it seemed Kunikita had already jumped into action. "I see. Thank you. May I ask what the contents of this letter is, Port Mafia?" he said, taking the letter from Kenji. "We're unaware of its contents for now. We're unaware of its contents. Now, if you will excuse, we have some work. Come on, Gin," Octogawa says, walking away from the door of the agency, Gin following behind. The Octogawa's delivering a letter, huh? Dazai said towards the door sill. Said, looking towards the door sill. I'll take the letter, Kunikita. I'll take it straight up to the president," Rumpo said, jumping down and taking it from Kunikita, walking away before he had time to protest. As soon as Rumpo passed the corner to the president's office, for once he put on a serious face. "President," he calls out, "a letter." Rumpo walks into the room, setting the letter down on the president's desk. "Ah, thank you, Rumpo. And who might this be from?" he asks, looking up at Rumpo. "The Mafia," Rumpo says, gesturing for the president to open the letter already. Fukasawa opens the letter hesitantly. The first thing he notices about the letter is that it's not it's not similar to the ones he's received in the past. The handwriting being different from the one Mori usually wrote with. Fukasawa began to read the letter. "Hello. Apologies for the suddenness of this letter, but we have important matters to discuss, do we not, President? The Mafia would like to ask the Armed Detective Agency if they would like to join us in an alliance. What might we get out of this? I'm sure you'll find out soon, will you not? Signed, the Port Mafia boss." Fukuzawa let out a sigh. Looks like we're scheduling a meeting with the mafia, he said, looking up at Rumpo, who was still in the room. Was there anything strange about the letter? I don't trust whatever the mafia is doing. Rumpo says, for once, not being able to pinpoint exactly what the mafia was trying to do. The handwriting is definitely not Mori's. It has a similar writing style, but his greeting and signature were also unlike him, Fukuzawa said, letting out another sigh. Well, might as well inform the others. It'll be improper to agree to an alliance without their input, correct? He starts to walk out of the office door with Rumpo following behind him. As soon as Fukuzawa enters the main part of the agency, he is quickly noticed. President, Kunikita says, bowing at the president. Hello. If you could all listen up, he says, getting straight to business. As you know, the mafia dropped a letter off not too long ago. I'm sure you're all curious about the content. I'm sure you're all curious about the content. After a pause, he continued. The mafia suggested an alliance between the two of us. For what reason, I cannot say I'm sure, but I decided that I would ask you for your opinion on the matter. Dazai thinks this is unusual. Mori wanting an alliance? Never. Seems as if he's not the only one who's thinking this way. The mafia wanting an alliance with us? Yeah, no, this is fishy as hell. Yoshino says, crossing her arms. Maybe they turned a leaf? Tanizaki shrugs. Is Mori, Tanizaki. Yoshino says, looking at him with a slight glare. Yeah, you're right, he says, looking away, kind of embarrassed that he suggested that in the first place. I believe it's not Mori who we're dealing with, Rumpo says, joining the conversation. What makes you say that, Rumpo-san? Atsushi asks, tilting his head in confusion. The handwriting, it's not Mori. And before you ask, every other letter he's ever sent has always been the same hands as English. And before you ask, every other letter he has ever sent has been the same hands before this one, he says, adding to the confusion of the room. Why wouldn't Mori write his own letter? And what if it's not Mori if it's not Mori who's writing it, then who is? On top of what Rumpo says, the greeting and signature does also look quite unusual from what he usually does, Fukuzawa adds. Dazai nods. Would you mind if I take a look at this letter, President? He asks with a smile on his face. Go ahead. The President hands the letter to Dazai. It doesn't take him long to know who wrote this. There was only one person who he knew who wrote like this, but even after knowing who wrote it, it only led to more questions. Why did he write it? Did something happen to Mori? Dazai-san? Kyoka says, standing next to him, gesturing to him to show her the letter. Huh? Is Chuuya's handwriting right? She says, looking over to Dazai with confusion written on her face. Is Chuuya's? The gravity manipulator, right? Yoshino says, wanting to double-check herself. Yup. Dazai says, popping the P, sounding kind of annoyed. But why? Kyoka asks, looking up at Dazai. You don't think... Dazai shakes his head. No, Chuuya could never. His loyalty is too deep for that. Mori probably was just too busy with Elise to write it himself. Gross. He says, handing the letter back to Fukuzawa. What do you think, Rumpo? Dazai says, turning towards Rumpo's desk. Rumpo had walked back to his desk full of snacks. What do I think? It doesn't matter. We'll find out everything at the meeting anyways, won't we? He says, being uninterested in all of this. So we're having the meeting? Atsushi asks, very confused about what's going on at the moment. Seems like it. If it's what Rumpo says to do, then why shouldn't we? Kenji says with a smile on his face. I suppose we can at least find out what they want in an alliance. Yoshino says, a hand on her hip. Alright, now that we're all on the same page, I'm going to return to my office. Continue with your work. Fukuzawa says, walking back to his office, informing Haruno to schedule the meeting on the way back. Dazai ever so slightly slides down his chair. What is Mori playing at? What could he possibly be planning? For once, the man had managed to stump him. Okay, that was chapter 1 of Turning Tide. I'll be moving on to chapter 2 now because that was a little bit too short to be a video by itself. I hope you guys like this. This is chapter 2, The Meeting. The Armed Detective Agency and the Port Mafia decide to hold a meeting 1 week later. It's a pretty gloomy day, but the agency is determined to figure out what's going on. The president decided to only bring a few members to the meeting, including himself, Rampo, Dazai, and Atsushi, deciding that it would be better to keep a smaller number at the meeting. However, that doesn't mean that the others weren't ready to help at a moment's notice. I can't believe we're on this watch duty or whatever they're calling this, Yosono says, as she wanted to see what Mori was playing at with all of this. We should trust the judgment of the president as well as Rampo. If they've decided that only a few of us should go, then so be it. We should just focus on doing our job, Kunikita said, ready to do whatever was needed. Yeah, I suppose you're right, she says, arms crossed, looking away. Kyoka, is everything okay? Kenji said, going up to the girl. Huh? Oh, yeah, just a bit worried is all, she says, looking towards Kenji. Kenji steps closer to her and grabs onto her hands. Don't worry, they know what they're doing. No one will get hurt, Kenji exclaims and smiles at her. Her nerves being calmed slightly, she smiles right back at him. The time for the long-awaited meeting finally came. The two organizations decided to meet at an unpopular park in Yokohama, only being unpopulated due to the extent of the mafia's business in the area. Are you sure I have to be here for this meeting? Atsushi asked, unsure of what help he could bring to and being overall stressed about the meeting. Yes, you have to be here, Atsushi. Sorry, but there's no getting out of this one, Dazai said, giving a grin to him. Thank you for agreeing to come along, even though I can tell your discomfort. The president spoke with a light smile on his face, quickly dropping down as he saw the mafia approach. Dazai scanned the faces of those approaching. According to what Rampo said, there should be four of them in total, hence their decision to bring 3 other agency members. As he looked through the faces, there were the ones he expected, Octagawa, Koyo, and Chuuya, but who Dazai didn't expect was Valorine. Valorine stood directly next to Chuuya, while Koyo and Octagawa trailed a bit behind. To see Valorine in public sure was a sight. Atsushi, standing close to Dazai, whispered to him, "Where's Mori?" Bewildered that he wasn't present. Had something in Rampo's calculations gone wrong? Dazai just replied by giving a small smile to Atsushi, one that Atsushi had seen multiple times before. He could trust Dazai and knew that everything would go the way they wanted. "Hello," Chuuya spoke, surprisingly soft for his usual tone of voice. "Thank you for accepting our letter," he continued, gaining a bit more confidence in his voice. Dazai internally almost panicked. Chuuya was taking initiative in this meeting, something he never did unless forced, and around his neck? No, Dazai thought he must be losing it. "Of course," Fukuzawa spoke. "However, I was unaware that Mori would not be here." Before Chuuya could speak, Koyo's voice rose. Unfortunately Mori has passed away, but we have been handling things very well." Mori was gone? The agency members present were a bit startled, even if they didn't show it. "Oh, so is that why you've been so quiet?" Rampo says, with a cheekiness in his voice. "Rampo," the president warned. My apologies, my condolences. If we want an alliance, I feel to need to know who the boss title is held by now," he said, looking back towards Chuuya since he started the conversation. "Yes, you have a right to know," he paused. The title of Port Mafia boss has been taken by me. He reached out his hand. Nakahara Chuuya, boss of the Port Mafia. Fukazawa took his hand and shook it. Fukazawa Yurichi, president of the Armed Detective Agency. It's a pleasure to meet the new boss. Chuuya nodded. Very much a pleasure. Now to business, I suppose? Do you have any questions about our alliance? He asks, even though he didn't show it on his face. As I could tell in his movement and speech, Chuuya didn't want to be here. Something was extremely wrong. Straight to the point, I see. Yes, I did have some questions. What is the purpose of this alliance? Fukazawa asks quite calmly. The purpose? Well, we hope to be able to get your help with the turn of a new boss. As far as I'm aware, the agency wasn't around when Mori rose to position, but I'm sure you heard and saw what it was like. He paused. Of course, this has a great benefit to you too. Not only will the night become unstable, but so will the dawn and dusk. It would be in your best interest to keep everything peaceful, correct? Chuuya finished, looking towards the president, determined to get him to agree. Dazai was observing the conversation, and he couldn't help but think, what had happened to Chuuya? Him having a conversation like this? Never. What did Mori do? Rampo looked towards the president for approval to speak. Once he got said approval, he spoke. So you want us to make an alliance to keep your own asses safe? And what makes you think we would agree to that? Sure, we want to keep peace, but who'd say it would affect us? He finishes, smirking at Chuuya waiting for his response. He takes a breath. Why would you agree? Yes, it doesn't seem like you get much from this. I'm not sure if you've heard, but there's rumors around a certain group, building their numbers with plans to attack Yokohama. He held a slight smile on his face. Fine, President. I think we can go ahead and have an alliance with them. It doesn't matter too much if we do or not. Rampo says, shrugging and looking towards the president. Dazai, Atsushi, any comments? The president says, turning towards the other two boys. Atsushi shakes his head, looking a bit stressed about all of this. Dazai moves his eyes from the president to Octogawa, knowing he's the only one he's likely to get an answer out of. Octogawa, he starts. Octogawa turns his head towards Dazai. You wouldn't happen to know more of what happened to Mori, would you? He asked, a grin on his face. Dazai-san, He starts before being cut off by Chuuya. Sorry, Dazai, but we have a tight schedule, and I don't feel it's as though this is important, no? He says, looking towards Dazai with a slight frown. My apologies, Chuuya-san, Octogawa says, looking away from Dazai. It's quite alright, Chuuya. It's quite alright, Octogawa. Jeez. Chuuya says, turning to smile towards Octogawa before turning back towards the president. So, what do you say? He asked with a small smile towards Fukazawa. Well, it seems that an alliance could do us all good, could it not? And if Rampo as well as Atsushi and Dazai seem fine with it, I have no reason to decline, he says, showing a slight smile back to Chuuya. Chuuya claps his hands together. Great. Would you like to have this in written form? I can send the Octogawas by again. That would be lovely, thank you. Fukazawa pauses. Well, I'm sure you're extremely busy, and I believe our meeting is at its conclusion, yes? For the first time, Valorine speaks up. Yes, that would be all. Now if you excuse us, we shall be off. Valorine says with a smile to the president along with a slight nod. Fukazawa nods back. With the confirmation of the meeting being over, Chuuya and Octogawa step further to the side, allowing Valorine and Chuuya between them. Once they step past, Chuuya and Octogawa turn to follow them. Before they get too far out of sight, Chuuya notices the movement of Chuuya's hand, grabbing onto Valorine, squeezing it. Rampo turns to the group the second he's sure the Port Mafia is out of earshot. I know I said we can agree to this alliance, which, yes, I'm on board for, but you can't deny that something's wrong here. Mr. Fancy Hat's not acting the way he did any other time we've interacted, Rumpo says, hands on his hips, looking at the others. I agree with Rumpo. Chuuya doesn't act like this, Dazai said. Plus, Mori's randomly passing away? Not likely. Looking towards Rumpo in an attempt to see a glimpse of an idea of a solution. Plus, Octogawa listened to Nakahawa-san when Dazai-san asked him a question, Atsushi said, looking slightly over to the side. We can discuss this with the group when we return to the agency. Let's return. Fukazawa says, starting to walk out of the park, the other three following behind. The 4 Port Mafia members return to the building. Boss, the guard knelt down, and as he walked by, Chuuya just took a breath, continuing to walk by. As they reached the main part of the first floor, Chuuya turned to Koya and Octogawa. You two are dismissed. Thank you for coming along to the meeting. Chuuya smiles at his 2 friends. Of course, Chuuya-san, Octogawa says, bowing and walking away. Remember, lad, if there's anything ever need anything, we're here for you, okay? She says, smiling at Chuuya. A look of sadness in her eyes when Chuuya nodded back at her to see her turn on her heels and leave. Chuuya took a deep breath, turning towards Valorine. Shall we head up? He said, looking at him. Yeah, let's go, Valorine said, walking with Chuuya towards the elevator that led to the top floor of the Port Mafia building. Chuuya and Valorine stood off the elevator on the top floor. The guards on the floor turned towards them, kneeling as they walked by. Valorine opened the door, allowing Chuuya to step into the office. Valorine put an arm onto Chuuya's shoulder once they entered the room, and the door behind them was closed. You did good today, Chuuya, even with him being there, Valorine said, smiling at Chuuya. Yeah, it went pretty well, didn't it? Chuuya said, looking up from Valorine, his eyes asking for a quick hug from his older brother. Valorine smiled at him, pulling him into a hug, quickly letting go as they heard shoes approach them from the other side of the room. Hello, you two, the person said. I take the meeting went well? The smile morphs into a grin. Isn't that great? Yes, it is great, Chuuya says, taking a deep breath, Valorine grabbing onto his hands. And no information spill, no? The person paused, waiting for the nod Chuuya gave. Great. You two are good to turn in for the night. The person turns on their heel and leaves the room. Chuuya and Valorine depart to their rooms. The temporary peace both of them sought out during this time. Chapter 3. When everything crashed. 1 month prior. Knock knock. Who is it? Chuuya called out to the knocks on his office door. It's me, lad, Koyo said. Ah, come in, Chuuya said, getting up and walking closer to the door to greet her. Is there something you need, Annie-san? Chuuya asked, smiling at the older woman. No, it's nothing I need, but the boss is calling for you, she stated, giving a very slightly concerned look to the boy. Oh, thank you for letting me know. I'll head up. Bye, Annie-san, Chuuya said, walking out of the door, flashing a reassuring smile on his face. Koya stepped out of his room, pulling the door shut behind her. She didn't know why, but for once she felt uneasy. Chuuya arrived on the top floor of the Port Mafia, walking towards the door of Mori's office. The guard nodded at him as he walked by. Chuuya followed them with a nod of his own before knocking on the door. Ah, Chuuya-kun, come in. Chuuya stepped into the office, seeing Mori sitting at his desk, a sickening grin on his face. Chuuya took a breath before walking further into the room before kneeling. Koyo said, You called for me, boss? Chuuya said, keeping his gaze fixed to the ground. Ah, yes, I did indeed. If you could please stand, Chuuya. If you could please stand, Chuuya. Chuuya rose to his feet rather quickly, replacing his hat on his head. As for the reason I called you here, well, I have a very important task for you. His smile, if you could even call it that, continued to grow. Anything you request for me, I'll do, Chuuya said, giving a slight bow to the man ahead of him. Good. Good. You know that's why I'm trusting you with this job. Mori's grin grew even bigger. You're the most loyal member after all. Who could lead people better? Mori laughed. Lead the people? I apologize, I don't follow, Chuuya said, trying to keep his tone and look as professional as possible. He'll be the next port mafia boss. Ah, don't worry, you won't be alone. Chuuya's eyes opened wide in shock. Boss? Chuuya almost whispered, his voice almost shaking. As I said, you won't be alone. You'll have, well, that part is not important yet, but you'll have a right-hand man, Mori said, looking at Chuuya with a sickening face. Chuuya took a deep breath to steady himself before speaking. Who might my right-hand man be? Your dear brother, of course. Well, your dear brother, of course. Who else would be more fit? Mori's face evened out to what seemed like a smirk compared to his previous grin. I see, Chuuya paused. Thank you for this opportunity. Chuuya did a slight nod, waiting for Mori to continue. Here, Mori opened one of the drawers of his desk, pulling out a key and tossing it to Chuuya. That's the key to where he's at. Go and tell him about this and bring him up. I'll explain more then, Mori said, gesturing for Chuuya to go on. Chuuya quickly bowed before turning and heading out of the room. Once Chuuya left Mori's office, he let out a breath he wasn't aware he was holding. He stood there for a bit, taking in everything that he had been told. He didn't stand there for long though, knowing Mori wouldn't be happy if he took too long. Chuuya collected himself and walked towards the elevator and headed down to where Valerian was staying. Knock knock. Chuuya hesitated before opening the door. Valerian? He called out. Chuuya felt a bit awkward, not having seen the man for quite a few years. Valerian turned towards the door. Chuuya? Oh, what a surprise. What's with the visit? Valerian said, smiling at Chuuya. Well, boss told me he had some things that relate to both of us. He wanted me to come grab you before he explained more, Chuuya said, looking away from Valerian. Mori wants something from the both of us? That can't be good. Valerian walked closer to Chuuya, putting a hand onto his shoulder. Chuuya's head snapped up. No matter what he does, I promise I'll be with you every step of the way. Can you tell me some more of what he told you? Valerian asked Chuuya, the hand retracting from his shoulder. Yeah, basically he wants me to become the new port mafia boss and you to be my right-hand man. But I think there's something more to it. He was grinning way too much for my liking, Chuuya said, crossing his arms near the end. That's sick, man. You can never tell what he's thinking or planning, Valerian said, letting out a sigh. I'd love to say chat more, but I think Mori wouldn't be the happiest if we took long, Chuuya said, starting to turn and walk towards the door, hoping Valerian would follow him. Let's go then, Valerian replied, following Chuuya out of the door and back towards Mori's office. It's been quite a while since I've been to his office, Valerian said as I stepped off the elevator. Not much has changed, I can tell you that, Chuuya said, shrugging his shoulders as he continued to walk down the hallway. Yeah, figured as much. The pair reached the door. Do you want to go in first or me? Valerian said, looking over at Chuuya with a slight smile. I'll go in first, Chuuya said, smiling back at him before knocking on the door. Knock knock. Come in, you two. Mori spoke through the door. Chuuya pushed the door open, Valerian following behind him. Chuuya and Valerian walked further into the office, kneeling down in front of Mori. "Welcome back, Chuuya, and welcome, Valorine." The two gave slight nods. "You two can stand." Both of them rose, Chuuya replacing his hat on top of his head. "Chuuya told me you had a job for us," Valorine said, looking at Mori to see what information he could get out of him. "Yes, I'm sure he told you some of it, no? I won't repeat it, so let's get to business, yes? As you both know, the mafia is very busy," Mori said, a grin beginning to grow on his face. Chuuya simply nodded while Valorine stood still, waiting for Mori to continue. "Chuuya will become the boss, and you," Mori gestured over to Valorine, "will be his right-hand man. Any questions so far?" Mori said, suspecting that at least Valorine would have something to say, not being as loyal to the mafia as Chuuya. "I have one, if you don't mind." Valorine paused, continuing after receiving a nod from Mori. "Why is it that the mafia needs a new boss? I was unaware that something was happening to you." Valorine looked Mori in the eyes. Seeing him hiding how large he would like his grin to be. "Well, I just think it's time for a change, is it not?" Mori said, smiling over towards Chuuya. Chuuya figured Mori wanted to talk to him, but boss, you only rose to power 7 years ago. Chuuya was confused. Mori killed the previous boss to get this position, and now he was just giving it to Chuuya? Did it even work that way? Could Mori even do that? "I understand your confusion, but don't worry. All will make sense in due time." Mori stood up from his desk, walking over to where Valorine and Chuuya were. Mori reached up to his neck, taking his scarf off, placing it around Chuuya's shoulders. "See, it fits you perfectly," Mori said, clasping his hands together. Chuuya simply nodded back to Mori, glad when Valorine took over the conversation. "And where will you be going? Surely you can't give over your position." Valorine moved closer to Chuuya to help calm him some. You sure have a great question, don't you, Valorine?" Mori gave a slight glance to Valorine for a slight second before he re-broke into a grin. I think you need to learn that you may be Chuuya's right-hand man, but you have no power here." Mori continued to grin. "As his right-hand man, would I not have power? Valorine said, glaring at Mori. Chuuya looked over to Valorine, his eyes slightly opening in shock in the way Valorine was talking to Mori. Mori's grin dropped. He walked over to Valorine, grabbed him by the arm, and whispered in his ears. "You nor Chuuya have any authority in this room. Got that? I could kill you at any moment I please." Mori let Valorine go, taking a step back. "Any further questions?" he said, his grin returning to his face. Chuuya shook his head quickly, not wanting to be as far away from Mori as possible. "Great, now, come along," Mori said, walking towards a room to the side of his office. Chuuya was unaware that there was even a room to the side of his office. When they stepped in, Chuuya only saw a single object in the room. A bed sat in the middle of the room. It had white sheets and a closed black curtain around it. "What's this?" Chuuya spoke up, confused about where Mori was taking them and for what purpose. "This is the place where I'll, die, much like the previous boss." Mori grinned at Chuuya. "I'm sorry, boss. I don't think I could kill you. You're my boss," Chuuya said, trying to understand just what Mori was thinking. What was this man trying to do? Mori turned to Chuuya. "Don't worry, Chuuya. You won't have to do much. Mori walked to the other side of the room where there was a small table, one that Chuuya had missed when they first walked into the room. Once at the table, Mori grabs a cup of who knows what and a bottle of some mysterious liquid. Mori walked back over to Chuuya, handing him the bottle. "This is for?" Chuuya asked, looking up at Mori. Mori simply held out the cup. "Take the lid off and pour it into the cup, will you?" Mori's grin continued to grow even wider. Valerian stood slightly to the side, watching all this happen. He began to gain a clue of what Mori was trying to do and what his plan was. Chuuya took a breath, listening to what Mori had told him, and opened the bottle, turning it to its side and dumped the contents in the cup. Once the bottle was empty, Chuuya replaced the lid on the bottle. "Great, thank you." Mori looked towards Chuuya, a sick grin on his face, before taking a cup to his lips, drinking the contents of the bottle. Chuuya was shocked. "Boss, what is it that you just took?" Chuuya was confused on why Mori would be drinking the contents of a seemingly random bottle. Next thing Chuuya knew, Mori had collapsed to the ground. "Boss!" Chuuya panicked, dropping the bottle he was still holding to the floor, running over to Mori. Valerian reached down and grabbed the bottle that Chuuya had dropped. It was unlabeled, but whatever it was had a very quick effect. "Valerian, I can feel a pulse." Chuuya looked over his shoulder towards Valerian. Valerian rushed over, the two of them lifting Mori to the bed. A few hours later. Mori's pulse had slowed down extremely within the hour. Chuuya tracked Koyo down as fast as possible, but by the time they got back, he was already gone. Valerian walked over to the table Mori had set the cup on before, seeing the letter sitting on it. "Koyo-san?" Valerian said, turning towards Chuuya and Koyo. She gave him a hum to let him know she was listening. "This letter is for you." Valerian handed the letter over to Koyo. She began to read the letter out loud. "Dear Koyo, if you're reading this, I have unfortunately passed. Don't worry, everything will go smoothly. Here is what you'll do. Keep a low profile for a bit. The new boss shall be Chuuya, with Valerian as his right-hand man. For the rest, well, they'll know what to do. Mori." "So he is really dead," Chuuya said, looking at Koyo in still in disbelief at everything that had just happened. "What was the cause, though?" Koyo said, looking at Valerian, figuring he might have some idea. "Not entirely sure. Let me look into it some more," Valerian said, walking around the room looking for any more clues. "We should inform the others, lad. Do you want to come with me?" Koyo said, looking at the younger boy, still in a state of shock. "Yeah, I'll come along with you," he said, walking out of the room with Koyo leaving just Valerian in the room. 2 days later. Mori's body had yet to move since they were still trying to figure out his cause of death. Valerian, Chuuya, Koyo, and Hirotsu were sitting in what used to be Mori's office. "Valerian, do you have any ideas of what the cause of death might be?" Koyo asked him, still slightly wary of him. "Poison, but that's all that I've got. What kind? Can't say. It's not one I'm familiar with, that's for sure," he said, looking towards Chuuya. "What should we do going forward, Chuuya?" Chuuya looked up towards Valerian. "Well, I suppose we should just try our best to keep everything with the mafia in order. I know us three," he gestured towards himself, Koyo, and Hirotsu. "Experience a change of boss. It can be kind of insane," he said, holding back a sigh. Koyo placed a hand on Chuuya's shoulder. "While it was quite insane, you have the support of many of the mafia's members already, something Mori didn't," she said, smiling at Chuuya. "She's got a point, kid. If anyone has a good shot at leading the mafia, it's you," Hirotsu said. "If you'll excuse me, boss, I have some work to attend to." Chuuya nodded at him. Hirotsu stood and walked towards the door, leaving. "Hirotsu has a point," Koyo said, standing up to leave as well. "We have plenty to work on. Remember, lad, if you ever need anything, we are all a call away." She smiled at Chuuya, reaching down to give him a hug before leaving the room. Once the door was shut behind her, Chuuya let out a sigh. How are we supposed to do this? Chuuya said, talking to no one, really, even though Valorine was in the room. You two were told you wouldn't be alone, weren't you? A voice called out from the other side of the room. Who? Valorine turned around only to be stopped in his tracks. Chuuya sat there frozen in place. How? Is all Chuuya could say, his eyes blown wide. I was sure you... Chuuya could barely think. What had happened? How did any of this make sense? Shh, no need to panic. Everything will come together in the end, won't it? The voice broke into a grin. Valorine spoke up. You were dead. I know that for a fact you were. So how? I want an answer. Valorine was puzzled. None of this made sense at all. Well, that bottle... Let's just say there was a bigger picture. Now, we have work to do, don't we? You should listen to your elders, Chuuya. Get to work. He set his papers down on the desk, walking back towards the room where he came from. Well, you heard him. Let's get to work. Chuuya walked over to the desk, starting to look at the papers. 3 weeks later. Knock. Chuuya-san. Octagawa walked into his office behind his sister, Gin, trailing behind. You called for us? Yes, I did. Thank you for coming, Chuuya said with a smile on his face. The Octagawas bowed as Chuuya continued. You two can stand. You don't need to bow for me. It's kind of embarrassing anyway. Anyways, I got a letter I need you two to deliver to the Armed Detective Agency, if you wouldn't mind. Of course not. We'll do whatever you need to do. Whatever you need, we will do, Octagawa said, walking towards Chuuya to grab the letter. Amazing. Thank you. You two are dismissed, Chuuya said, giving one last smile to the siblings before they turned and walked out of the office. Good. Everything's going according to plan. Chapter 4. What's really happening? Present day after the meeting. After the meeting with the Port Mafia, the members of the Armed Detective Agency meet back up. So, what did Mori want in this alliance? Yoshino spoke up first, crossing her arms, annoyed at anything to do with the man. Well, for starters, the Port Mafia is no longer ran by Mori. When Fukuzawa said this, the other agency members that were in the meeting went into a panic. I'm sorry, President Mori is no longer the boss of the Port Mafia. Kunikita was the first to reply to Fukuzawa, asking the question on everyone's mind. Rampo spoke up for the president. I'm sure you all remember Mr. Fancy Hat, right? The others gave him nods, still looking confused. Well, he's the new boss, Rampo said, trying not to worry the others too much with everything that was going on. Chuuya is the new boss? Kyoka spoke quietly before turning to Dazai. Dazai, why? What happened? She hoped that, like always, he had an answer. As of right now, we're not completely sure. I tried to ask Octagawa, but Chuuya shut that down immediately, Dazai said, having a serious look on his face for once. So, something happened to Mori, but we don't know what? Tanizaki asked, making sure he had all the pieces. That's what it sounds like, Yoshino said, her hands on her hips. We have to help Chuuya, Kyoko explains. Something has to be really wrong. Kenji came over to Kyoka. I'm sure Mr. Fancy Hat will be okay, but we can always go check on him, Kenji says with a big smile to Kyoka. She smiles back at him. Kenji-kun's what? Right. I'm sure Nakahara-san will be fine, Kyoka. Atsushi gave a small smile to the girl. Shouldn't we worry about what's going on? I'm getting. Good, cause this will cut into my schedule, Kunikita says, crossing his arms. I don't think we should. I think we should worry about it, Rampo says, surprising everyone. I mean, we're all interested in what happened, right? What's the worst thing that can happen anyway? Rampo shrugged his shoulders, pulling out a lollipop from his pocket. Well, first thing tomorrow. We'll have a meeting first thing tomorrow morning to go over the things we know. The president spoke. For now, finish up any remaining work. Fukazawa headed towards the office. The next day, Kunikita walked into the office to see Dazai and Atsushi talking to the Octogawas. What are they doing here? Kunikita asked while walking over. Oh, they were just delivering the juice, but I asked them to stay for a bit, Dazai says with a huge grin on his face. Was it what you needed, Dazai-san? We have duty to attend to. What is it you needed, Dazai-san? We have duty to attend to, Octogawa said, nodding at the man. Well, Chibi interrupted my question yesterday, so what happened to Mori? Dazai asked, leaning down close to Octogawa. Before he could speak, Gin spoke. Mori has passed. Dazai turned towards Gin. Yeah, I'm aware of that much, but how? Dazai asked, starting to get annoyed with that they were hiding the reason. The boss has asked us not to disclose that information, Gin said, standing and heading towards the door, expecting Octogawa to follow her. Octogawa gets up and walks towards the door his sister left out of. Before he opens the door, he turns. He was poisoned, is all I know. And then he turned the door handle, leaving with his sister. 1 hour later. Did you get anything out of the Octogawas, Dazai? Yasuno asked, looking towards the man as the group was waiting for the president in the meeting room. Not much. Apparently they're not supposed to be talking about it, but Octogawa told me he was poisoned. He said that's all he knows. Whether or not that's the truth, I couldn't tell you. Dazai shrugs his shoulders. Poison? Isn't Mori one of the best doctors? Todosaki asked, confused on how Mori could have gotten himself poisoned. And that would mean Chuuya poisoned him, right? And that he has a witness? Kyoka said, looking towards the ground, feeling conflicted emotions. Kenji, sitting next to her, stands up and gives her a hug, smiling at her. Nakahara-san poisoning Mori? I thought you said he was really loyal to the mafia, Atsushi says, looking towards his mentor. He is, which is why this is making even less sense. It's not like he lost control and flat out killed him. Dazai mumbles the end of his sentence, still trying to figure everything out. After a few minutes of silence, the president walks in. The members of the agency bow. You can all sit, he says. About the contents of the truce is quite simple. Just we don't attack each other, and that in the face of danger we'll help one another. Any objections should be said now. After a beat of silence, he continues. All right. What do we know about the current situation, Kunikita? Well, so far we don't know much. Mori mysteriously passed. According to Dazai, it's by poison. Chuuya Nakahara took over his position. He has been a Port Mafia member for 7 years, and the members of the Mafia seem to have a strong liking for him. Kunikita says, giving the information he's been given by the others. Poison? Fukazawa whispers. Do you know what kind, Dazai? Dazai looks towards the president. Unfortunately, no. Octogawa only told me that it was poison. Fukazawa nodded, turning towards Rumpo. Do you have any ideas, Rumpo? Rumpo turned towards the president and he took a breath. President, I have no proof and I have no idea what, but I know for a fact that something is extremely wrong. Rumpo was making direct eye contact with the president to make sure he knew Rumpo was really telling the truth. The president nodded and Yoshino spoke up. So, we all agree something's wrong here. Cool. But the question is... But that question is, what are we supposed to do about it? Almost everyone in the room looks at each other, no one having an idea. Dazai, Rumpo says, looking across the table to the man. Dazai looks over at him. In response, Dazai In response to Dazai's acknowledgement, he just nods his head, and Dazai nods back. I'm sorry for you two, but not all of us are geniuses. What were you two communicating about? Yoshino asks, looking at the two boys annoyed at their shenanigans. Nothing that you need to worry about, Rumpo says, a grin on his face. Huh? Atsushi felt his phone ring in his pocket. He pulls out to see who's calling. Is it okay if I step out for a second? Atsushi asks, looking towards the president, who nods. With the confirmation, he was out into the hallway. Atsushi picks up the phone. Akutagawa? Jinko. I want to know what's going on too. Most of the mafia has been kept in the dark. Whatever questions you have, I'll answer with the knowledge I have. Akutagawa says. Atsushi, hearing a slight cough over the phone. Are you sure? Won't get into trouble. Atsushi wouldn't want to say that he was worried about Akutagawa, but he also said he couldn't. He isn't. I'll be fine. Now ask. I don't have much time. Akutagawa says with an ever so slight panic tone in his voice. Okay, he said he was poisoned. What kind? Atsushi asked, sorting through what questions seemed most important to ask. I don't know, but it took him down in seconds of him drinking it. Akutagawa replies, another cough following his sentence. Was Nakahara-san chosen by Mori, or did he become the boss by killing him? Atsushi doesn't know much about mafia dealings, but from what he's heard, from not only Dazai but Kyoka too, he knows that this is important to ask. As far as I know, he was chosen by Mori, Akutagawa said. Atsushi could hear the slight shift in the other side of the line. The funeral, how did it go? Maybe not the most important question, but Atsushi thought it could help at least somewhat. We didn't have one, Akutagawa hesitantly responded, realizing for the first time how strange all of it truly was. Atsushi was happy that his question paid off. But he died almost a month ago, right? Atsushi didn't understand why they wouldn't have one. He had hundreds of people working under him. Yeah, only a few members have been allowed to see his body. I haven't seen it. Akutagawa starts to sound a bit more on edge. Thank you, Akutagawa. I'll let you go. Atsushi decides that that's enough information for now. Whatever, Jinko. Akutagawa quickly hung up the phone. Atsushi walks back into the meeting room. I have some new information, he says hesitantly, retaking his seat. Go ahead and share it with us, the president says, nodding at Atsushi. It's highly unlikely Nakahara-san killed Mori. They never had a funeral for Mori, and only a few people actually saw Mori's body, Atsushi said, explaining it in the best way he could. I assume Akutagawa called you, right? I know he wants to figure this out too, Dazai says, leaning back in his chair. Atsushi nodded at him quickly. They didn't have a funeral, Yoshino asks. But before anyone can answer, Rumpo asks a question. Did Akutagawa see the body? Rumpo is pretty much staring down at Atsushi. He quickly shakes his head. Really? I know he's not an executive, but he and Chuuya are pretty close, Kyoka says, confusion written on her face. Before anyone can continue the conversation, Fukazawa speaks up. From this moment forward, we will resolve what's going on with the mafia. We want to make sure all the Yokohama's remain safe. The agency members nod towards the president. The agency members had returned to the main part of the office after the meeting had concluded. They sat in silence, some working on papers they still needed to finish, others simply doing whatever. After about 20 minutes of undisturbed silence, the sound disrupted the quietness. Ping! Dazai looked towards his phone. One of the cameras he totally didn't use to spy on Chuuya pinged him that he was there inside of the apartment. For the first time in a month, Chuuya had returned. Dazai For the first time in the month, Chuuya had returned. Wow, English is great. Daza had to see what he was doing. He quickly stood up and began to walk towards the door until Kunikita stopped him. Where do you think you're going? He asked, already annoyed with whatever excuse Daza was going to come up with. He didn't expect that excuse, though. He didn't expect the excuse of someone. Didn't expect someone else coming up with the excuse. Let him go, Rampo said, looking at the two in front of him. Kunikita was about to protest when Rampo gave him a look. He let Dazai leave right away. Dazai stepped out of the agency door, quickly making his way down the stairs and onto the road. Dazai, for the first time in years, ran, making his way to Chuuya's apartment as fast as he could. Chapter 5. Return Home. Dazai ran down the streets of Yokohama, taking every shortcut he knew, not caring whose territory he would actually walk into. In less than 20 minutes, he reached Chuuya's apartment. Taking a deep breath and trying to get all the air back into his lungs as he began to start picking the lock to Chuuya's door. When he finally got it unlocked, he gently opened the door. He stepped into the house, then gently shut the door behind him. Dazai looked around the apartment, looking for Chuuya. Dazai found him standing in front of a closet with a fairly small box next to him on the floor. Chibi? Dazai called out, startling the man in front of him. Chuuya quickly whipped his head around. Dazai, what the hell are you doing here? Chuuya asked, clearly not very happy to see the man in his house. Meh, I just thought I would come to see if Chibi decided to finally come home, and seems like I was right, as always. Dazai said, a smirk bouncing off his face. I'm at my house, so what? And who says you could get here? Get out. Chuuya crosses his arms, looking annoyed at the man bothering him. You haven't been home for around a month, Dazai mumbles, but Chuuya catches it. I'm sorry, were you watching me or something, you freak? Chuuya said, starting to get a bit more pissed. Well, it's an owner's responsibility to watch over their dog, isn't it? Dazai said with a smirk to cover the worry hidden behind. Chuuya sighed and walked away from the closet towards his kitchen. Dazai took a glance at the box that had stood behind Chuuya. Dazai was confused. It contained stuff he knew Chuuya would never want to get rid of. Memories of his friends, the sheep, the flags. There was no way he was getting rid of these, were there? Dazai turned around and followed Chuuya, leaning against the island on the opposite side of Dazai. So, what the hell do you want? Chuuya said, starting to glare at Dazai. I prefer if you wouldn't be in my house. Dazai smiles. Like I said, I'm checking on my dog. What you packing for? Dazai glanced over to the box again before looking towards Chuuya. None of your fucking business, Chuuya mumbles, wishing the man would just leave. Oh, come on, Chibi, just tell me. Dazai said, starting to be annoying in order to get under Chuuya's skin. If it'll make you shut up, I'm moving the stuff. Chuuya huffed, looking away from the man. Oh, but it's important stuff, isn't it? Dazai said, leaning closer to Chuuya. Shut up, Dazai. Stop acting like you actually give a fuck for once. Chuuya yelled, his glare increasing. He stared down the man. Dazai slightly reached out his hand, grabbing Chuuya's. Chuuya jumped slightly, confusing Dazai. Chuuya had never been this jumpy before. I do care, Chuuya, Dazai whispered, looking into Chuuya's eyes softly. Don't lie to me, Dazai, Chuuya spoke, looking down and away from Dazai. I'm not, Chuuya, so please, tell me what's going on. Dazai spoke gently, rubbing Chuuya's hand lightly. Chuuya looks back up at Dazai, his eyes glossed with tears but not yet crying. Chuuya has a choice to make. He knows what will happen if he lets Dazai know, but if he told Dazai, his partner, the man he trusted more than anything, he would help him, he could free him. But Chuuya couldn't make himself tell him the truth. Chuuya just looked in the eyes of his ex-partner as tears beginning to fall down his face. Chuuya, Dazai softly called out, unused to seeing his partner looking like that. Chuuya looked back down to the island. Chuuya took a deep breath. I can't tell you. I can't. You wouldn't understand. You don't understand. Chuuya barely spoke above a whisper, more tears beginning to fall down his face. Dazai moved around the island, now standing beside Chuuya. If you can't tell me, that's fine. Just at least let me know if there's something I can do, if there's anything I can do to help, Dazai said, reaching to wrap his arms around Chuuya. They stood there for a few minutes, Chuuya taking deep breaths, trying to contain everything that's going on. After a few minutes, Chuuya let out a sigh. Help me pack up some of my stuff, will ya? Help me pack up some of my stuff? Dazai nodded, following Chuuya back over to the closet. So, do you have more boxes, or just that one? Dazai said, looking around and not seeing any other boxes in the apartment. Just the one, Chuuya said, crouching down and looking through the box to see what he might be missing. Dazai thought it was strange. If he was moving stuff, then why did he only bring one box? And why was it so small? Like someone was constricting the amount of stuff he could bring. Ah, crap, where did I put it? Chuuya mumbled, backing away from the box and looking back towards the closet. What you looking for? Dazai asked, standing behind Chuuya, peering over his head. Just the book the flags gave me. It's stupid, but I want to keep it, Chuuya said, mumbling at the end. Want to be on the bookshelf with all your other books you probably haven't read? Dazai said, slightly backing away so Chuuya had room to move. Shit, so this is why you're useful, Chuuya said, getting up and walking towards his bookshelf. Chuuya's eyes scanned through the books. Once his eyes landed on it, he reached up to grab it. Wow, that's one crappy looking book, Dazai said, looking over to the beat up book in Chuuya's hands. Whatever, Chuuya said, rolling his eyes back as he headed towards the box. Placing the book into it gently. What about your poetry books? Dazai said, grabbing one off the shelf and looking towards Chuuya. If I have room for them, sure, but I think there's still a few more things I need to put in here, Chuuya said, going into the closet to look for more things. Dazai walked back over, stopping in front of Chuuya's bedroom door. The door was sitting open. Chuuya's desk, which had usually been covered in papers during Dazai's time in the mafia, was completely empty. Many of the objects in Chuuya's house had begun to collect a large amount of dust. Stop being a clean freak, slug, Dazai said, his hands slipping into his pockets. Chuuya, holding a small box in his hand, came out of the closet, placing it gently into the box. Excuse me? Chuuya said, giving a slight glare to Dazai. Well, everything's so dusty. It's really unlike the slimy slug, Dazai said with a grin on his face. God, will you ever learn to shut up? Chuuya rolled his eyes, looking towards his box. You got everything? Dazai asked, looking over at the box as well. Yeah, I had most of it packed before you came, Chuuya shrugged. Do you want any of your books? Dazai asked, already starting to walk towards the bookshelf, expecting Chuuya to say yes. No, I think I'm good, Chuuya said, almost sounding sad at the idea of leaving his poetry behind. You sure? Dazai asked. It's important to you, is it not? Dazai was more confused than anything. Chuuya had a big love of reading and writing poetry, but then again, Chuuya never did tell him the real reason why he was packing. Yeah, I'll be fine without them, Chuuya mumbled at the end, clearly wishing he could take it with him. Do you want me to take them? I can hold on to them, Dazai asked, genuinely worried about Chuuya, but also hoping he would reveal more. And ruin them? As if. Plus, it's not like I'm getting rid of the apartment or anything. I just can't stay here anymore, Chuuya replied, mumbling the last part of his sentence. Dazai took a second to think. Why wouldn't he be able to stay at his apartment? Sure, he was the new boss of the mafia, and that would put a target on his back, but Chuuya wasn't weak. He could easily protect himself. Gasped. Do you not trust me? Dazai said, whipping away, and pretending to shed a tear, wiping away a pretend tear from his eye, a hand over his heart. Oh, shut up, Chuuya said, standing up and facing Dazai. Don't make yourself useful and grab the packing tape. Chuuya rolled his eyes as Dazai waltzed his way over to the kitchen and grabbing the packing tape. Once Dazai had returned with the packing tape, he handed it over to Chuuya. There, dog. God, making your owner do all the hard work? What a terrible dog, really. Dazai laughed, causing Chuuya to give him a slight kick to the knee. Chuuya crouched back down towards the box, shutting it and taping it over. He stood up and was about to grab the box when Dazai asked him a question that made him stop. So, what happened to Mori? Dazai asked, looking at Chuuya, but not with a glare, not wanting to scare the man away. Why does it matter to you? It's not like you're in the mafia anymore, Chuuya said, crossing his arms. 'Cause Z Chibi killing Mori? Unlikely, so tell me, what was it? Dazai said, starting to get a bit more forceful. If you have to know, he was poisoned, Chuuya sighed out, looking towards the box on the floor rather than Dazai. Yeah, what kind? Mori's a skilled doctor, as much as I hate to admit it, Dazai said, getting closer to Chuuya. Just as he was about to speak, he got cut off by Chuuya's phone ringing. Shit, Chuuya said before fishing his phone out of his pocket, flashing Dazai a middle finger or warning to be quiet. Dazai listened, standing there quietly, but he couldn't hear what was on the other line. Chuuya, you've been gone an awfully long time. Did something happen? The person on the other line said. Yeah, I couldn't find what I was looking for. I'll be back soon, Chuuya said, glancing towards Dazai to making sure he stayed quiet. Make it 10 minutes, max, the voice said. Got it, Chuuya said, hanging up the phone, sliding it back into his pocket. So, who was it? Dazai asked, curious about the tone Chuuya held while talking to them. Octogawa said there was something going on, so I have to go, Chuuya said, reaching down towards the box. Better not trash my house, mackerel, Chuuya yelled, walking out of the apartment out of his apartment, box in hand. Dazai stood there for once confused about what in the world was going on. He looked through the closet, finding a box big enough for exactly what he needed. He walked over to the bookshelf and grabbed the poetry he knew were Chuuya's favourites. Even though he said he didn't want them, Dazai knew his partner better than that. Dazai taped up the box, sitting it down on the island in the kitchen. This time, not focused on Chuuya, he noticed that Chuuya's wine cabinet was covered in way more dust than Dazai had ever seen. Weirdly enough, compared to some other things in the house, it looked slightly less dusty. Dazai opened the cabinet, looking for anything inside. He wasn't really expecting anything, but something caught his eye. Pressed between two bottles of wine was a piece of paper. Dazai grabbed the piece of paper before slowly opening it. When he saw who it was from, he froze. Hello, Dazai. As you know, your dear Chuuya is the new boss of the Port Mafia. If you wish for your Chuuya to stay safe, keep the agency's dirty hands away from the Mafia. Your favourite person, Mori. Dazai almost dropped the letter on the floor, but he quickly composed himself. Quickly grabbing the letter in his pocket, putting the letter in his pocket, he shut the cabinet, grabbing the box as he left the apartment. Dazai quickly left the area, this time making sure to avoid any Port Mafia territory. Dazai decided that now he should head home. The workday is almost over anyways, plus it will give him some time to think about what he should do next. Should he tell the president that they need to drop this? Does he go against the letter and do something anyways? How would Mori know if the agency did anything? And most importantly, what was wrong with Chuuya? Dazai didn't have the answer to any of this, and he wasn't sure if anyone did. Chapter 6. The Truth. Dazai didn't get much sleep that night, too busy trying to think of how he could save Chuuya, or at the very least help him. But he didn't even have an idea of what was going on, other than it all had to do with Mori. Dazai got out of bed. It was 6 in the morning. He decided to wash his face off, trying to calm the storm inside his mind before getting dressed. He walked towards the kitchen area, grabbing the letter and heading out the door. Dazai walked towards the agency much earlier than he normally would. The streets were much quieter. For once, Dazai found the silence suffocating. Dazai, what's got you going around so early? Kenji said, waving and walking over towards Dazai, a smile on his face. You're normally late? Well, want to walk to the agency with me? Kenji started to walk off before Dazai could even answer him. Yeah, I'll walk with you, Dazai said, sliding his hands into his pockets, catching up to Kenji. Kenji and Dazai walked up the stairs to the agency. Once Kenji had made it to the door, he pushed it open. Good morning, he exclaimed, a large smile on his face. Good morning, Kenji, Yoshino said, smiling back at the boy. Oh, good morning to you as well, Dazai, she said, after seeing Dazai walk into the agency behind Kenji. What's got you here so early? Yoshino said, walking towards him. Meh, I was just up and had nothing to do. Dazai shrugged his shoulders. Too bad Kunikita isn't here yet. I would have loved to annoy him, Dazai said, walking towards his desk. Yoshino watched him, a slight smile on her face, shaking her head as the man walked away. About 30 minutes later, Atsushi, along with Kyoko, walked in through the door. Good morning, everyone, Atsushi said, starting to walk towards his desk, Kyoko following. Huh? You're here today early, Dazai-san? Atsushi said, a bit of confusion on his face. Ah, don't worry about it, Atsushi, Dazai said, giving him a light pat on the head. Dazai-san? Kyoko said, as Atsushi walked over towards Yoshino. What's up, Kyoko? Dazai said, turning towards the girl. You went to see Chuuya yesterday, right? She paused. Dazai nodded his head. Is he okay? She asked, very visibly worried. Dazai placed her hand on her head gently. He'll be okay. You want to know why? Kyoko nodded her head. 'Cause we're gonna save him, Dazai said, leaning back in his chair, with a smile on both of their faces. Over with Yoshino and Atsushi. Hey kid, need something? Yoshino asked, seeing the younger walk over to her. Atsushi nodded. I'm just worried about Dazai-san and Kyoko-chan. Both of them care a lot about Nakahara-san, and I'm not sure about Dazai, but he paused, looking towards Kyoko. I know that she didn't sleep very well last night, Atsushi said, looking back towards Yoshino. Yoshino took a breath, placing a hand on his shoulder. Well, then, we're just going to have to make sure our friends are okay, won't we? She said, removing her hand from his shoulder and walking over to the pair. Kenji, who had just been sitting at his desk, staring at his plant, decided to join Atsushi and Yoshino along with the others. What's this about saving Chuuya? Yoshino asked, walking over with Atsushi. Saving Miss Fancy Hat? Okay, let's do it, Kenji said, excited about anything that had to do with the man. Kyoko nodded quite quickly at that. Well, first you have to get this approved by the president, which means it getting approved by Ranpo and Kunikita as well, Dazai said, sighing. Ranpo would surely agree easily, but Kunikita? Dazai wasn't so sure. What about Tanizaki? Atsushi asked, tilting his head. Just as Atsushi said that, the two siblings walked through the door. Hey guys, Tanizaki said, walking his way over with his sister. Hi Tanizaki, Naomi, Atsushi said, giving them a wave. Say, Tanizaki, Dazai paused. Tanizaki looking over towards him. What do you say about helping out Chuuya? Dazai said. Tanizaki thought about it. Well, Nakahara seems like a pretty nice guy, so if he needs our help, why not? Tanizaki shrugged his shoulders. Naomi nodding beside him, showing her agreement. Just then, two people walked out of the president's office. "Hey, don't have a party without me," Rumpo called out. "What are we talking about?" he said, pulling himself into the conversation. "Hey, Rumpo-san, we're just talking about saving Nakahara-san," Atsushi said, quickly answering Rumpo. "Saving Nakahara? From what?" Kunakita said, crossing his arms. Dazai gasped. "You were here the whole time?" Kunakita gave him a glare. Okay, we all agree that something's going on with the Port Mafia, right?" Dazai said, and everyone nodded. "Well, it has to do with something with Mr. Fancy Hat's situation as the new boss," Rumpo said, taking the explanation from Dazai. "Yep," Dazai said, giving a slight nod. "Right, but what do we do?" Kunakita says, somewhat understanding the reason why they have to save him, but not how. "Well, as of right now, I've got zero leads as to what might be wrong," Yosuna said, crossing her arms, expecting him to, if anyone, to have any clue. "Actually, I found this," Dazai said, pulling out the letter out of his pocket and sliding it over to Yosuna. Yosuna read it, quickly handing it over to Rumpo when she was done. Atsushi, Kunakita, and Tanizaki peeked over their shoulders to read it. "This is worse than I thought. If Mori is involved in where this is going to be a pain." Yosuna sighs, brushing her fingers through her hair. "Mori?" Kyoka said, looking towards Dazai, who takes the letter back from Rumpo and hands it towards her. "Well, it makes sense," Kyoka said, looking back towards Dazai. "It does?" he asks, curious about what Kyoka knows about this. "I don't remember it all exactly," she said, looking towards Dazai, asking silently if she could continue. He gives her a nod. "Koyoni talked about Mori having violent morals, even willing to harm himself to get what he wants," she finished. The other agency members were in a bit of shock. No way, a Port Mafia boss wouldn't care about his own life. I mean, I wouldn't put it past him, that's for sure." Yoshino speaks up, snapping the others out of their racing thoughts. "Yeah, I could believe that, but if he's dead, what can he achieve?" Dazai said, looking towards Rumpo, hoping for an answer. "I don't think Mori is actually dead," Rumpo said, crossing his arms. "I suppose that would make sense. Can't have a funeral if a person isn't really dead," Tanizaki said, thinking about it. "But to fake your death so well, it has to be impossible, even for Mori," Yoshino said, still not totally believing it. "It will take time for the situation to come in view." The president steps into the room where everyone is. "President," they all said in unison, giving a bow. He gives them a nod. I've heard some of your conversation, and I agree that we need to at least help Nakahara," he said, walking over towards them. "And about Mori not being dead?" Rumpo asks, knowing the president knew him quite well. "I can't say for sure. I don't doubt you, Rumpo, but I also don't doubt that man," he says, giving a nod to Rumpo. Yoshino lets out a sigh. There's just so much we don't know. Who could we even start to ask?" she said, looking towards Dazai and Kyoka, them knowing the Mafia better than anyone else here. "Well, Chuuya's off the table. Gin won't speak, even if she would. I don't think she knows much, based on what Okutagawa doesn't know much either. The question is who has seen his body. They probably know the most," Dazai said, starting to ramble but catching himself. "Well, who was that other person in the meeting with Chuuya? Who was the other person with Chuuya at the meeting? I know Koyo-san, but I'm unfamiliar with the other," Atsushi said, starting to think maybe the other person could help. "Ah, you mean Valorine," Dazai said. "I'm not sure if he could help us, but it could sure be worth a try," Dazai said, looking over towards Rumpo, silently asking for his opinion. "Based on the meeting, Valorine, or whatever Mr. Fancy Hat's right man is, or whatever, is Mr. Fancy Hat's right-hand man. If Mori is pulling some sort of strings, it's possible that he's caught up with it too. Rumpo says, trying to come up with anyone else they could talk to. We could try talking to Koyo, Yoshino said, giving a shrug. That might be our only choices for now, but how are we going to contact her? Kunikida said, looking around at everyone. Almost everyone was unsure, but the two geniuses looked towards Kyoka. We never removed her phone contacts, Dazai said, looking towards Rumpo. So she should still have Koyo's number, Rumpo said, looking back at Dazai. Is that okay with you, Kyoka? We can call her from a different phone, Atsushi asked, worried about Kyoka. It's fine, Atsushi, don't worry, she said, giving Atsushi a slight smile. Sorry to interrupt, but I'll let you get back to your conversation soon. The president spoke, everyone turning towards him. But I wish to speak to Dazai and Rumpo in my office. The members of the agency bowed, Rumpo and Dazai following Fukazawa into his office. What do you want to talk about, President? Rumpo said, a slight smile on his face. Fukazawa took a breath. I wanted to talk about our plans with the mafia. He paused. The other two gave a nod. I understand that you have a pretty strong want to help out Nakahara, but you'd have to understand this could cause a war, the president said, a serious look on his face. I understand, President. If you wish to take the agency out of this, feel free to, but at least allow them to help me plan. I'm going to save Chuuya, no matter what, Dazai said, giving a slight bow before turning up with a serious face. I might not care about the mafia that much, but I do know that other members of the agency do, Rumpo said, looking towards the president, who gave him a nod. If a war has to happen, so be it. We're saving Chuuya. Rumpo held a serious face. The president gave them a nod. I see you both have strong determination. I approve of this mission, officially. Fukazawa gave them both a nod. You are both dismissed, unless you have any questions. Both of them shook their heads, walking out of the office. Gosh, that was a bore, Rumpo said, crossing his arms. Right? Like, of course we're going to do this mission no matter what, he said. Dazai said, hands behind his head. They both walked towards the main part of the agency to meet back up with the others and discuss their further plans. Chapter 7. Avoid. Koyo was sitting in her office drinking a cup of tea when suddenly her phone starts ringing. She picks it up. Hello? She asks. Hello, is this Koyo? This is the Armed Detective Agency. The person on the other end of the line says, Yes, this is her. Who is this? How did you get my number? And what do you need? She asks, a bit confused on why the agency was calling her. Yes, my name is Kunikida. I'm not sure if we've spoken before. Anyways, we got your number from Kyoka. As for what we want, we just want a few questions. We can make them worth your time. Kunikida says, hoping along with the others that she will agree. Koyo took a deep breath. Yes, I'll answer your questions. As for doing what's worth my time, we'll figure that out later, she said, wanting to be on the phone with them as little time as possible. A new order had gone out this morning, and she didn't want to risk getting into trouble. The order? Don't attempt to make contact with the Armed Detective Agency no matter what. The order was very sudden. The second the mafia officially opened, Chuuya had announced it. Amazing, thank you so much. First of all, if you wouldn't mind telling us, what was the cause of Mori's death? Kunikida asked, clearly a bit of worry in his voice. Poison, and before you ask, I don't know what kind other than it killed him in less than 3 hours, she said, hearing some talking on the other side. She just patiently waited for them to be done. I see. From our sources, we have heard that not only did he not have a funeral, but very few people have seen him. If you don't mind that I ask, why would someone of his status not have a funeral? And did you get a chance to see the body? Kunikita asked, hoping that she would at least have an answer for one of the questions. Koyo paused. She really shouldn't be telling them, but maybe they realised something was wrong too. No, we didn't have a funeral, and you're correct. Not many people saw the body, but I was one of the few. She let out a breath, worrying that this might be a mistake, but she wanted to hold some trust in them. Would you mind if I pass the phone to Dr. Yoshino? She has a few questions for you, Kunikita said. Yoshino has wanted to ask some questions about the body itself in an attempt to figure out what poison killed him. Go ahead, Koyo asked. She heard some shuffling before a new voice spoke. Hello, Koyo. Yoshino spoke. I have a few questions about Mori's body if you don't mind me asking. Feel free to ask what you wish, she said, still trying to keep herself as professional as possible. What did his body look appearance-wise? Yoshino asked, having a notepad in front of her ready to write down whatever Koyo said. He looked very pale. It was unlike most other poisoning any of us had ever seen, so we haven't figured out what it was. Koyo figures the best way to do this was to be honest. He was pale, no redness around the mouth or anything else like that. Yoshino asked, already very confused. This didn't sound like a normal poisoning case. No, he was simply pale. I think it killed him in around 3 hours, as I said before. Koyo said, it wasn't exactly a fast-acting poison, but it wasn't a very slow one either. I see. How long were you allowed to see the body? Yoshino asked. Maybe Rampo could have been right. Was Mori really not dead? Not that long. I saw it when Chuuya brought me there. And then, once again, maybe an hour later, when we brought Hirotsu. Koyo was starting to think the agency definitely had some idea, but she herself had none. What did you guys do with the body? Rampo told Yoshino. This would probably be a good question. It might be able to answer a few more questions. I'm unsure. Chuuya nor Valorine ever talked about what they did with the body. I just know that it was there one day and gone the next. Not a single soul in the mafia. Not a single other soul in the mafia other than the four of us that day ever got to see it. Koyo found it very strange even to this day. Valorine told them that he died from poisoning and that was the last they had mentioned of it. Koyo heard some talking outside from the other side of the line, but was unable to make out any of it. Thank you, Koyo. Is there anything as for right now we can do for you? Kunikita asked, being put back on the phone. Koyo paused. Let me speak to Dazai for a second, she asked, not really wanting to talk to him, but she had to ask. Of course, Kunikita said, following with the shuffling in the background. And he said, you want to talk to me? I'm flattered, Dazai said, acting like his usual annoying self. You visited Chuuya the other day, right? She said, jumping straight into the question. I did, Dazai said, his tone getting more serious after hearing her question. I figure you're already on it, but find out what's really going on. Chuuya passed an order this morning not to have contact with the agency, despite the truce. Koyo said, laying everything on the table. I promise you, Annie-san, we'll save him. I'll let you go. This couldn't have been a safe call for you to have, Dazai said, hanging up the phone before Koyo could get another word in. Koyo just sat in her office. Was this a mistake to let the agency know so much? No. She was doing this for Chuuya. Something was clearly wrong. She knew she couldn't figure it out on her own. So, it was good that she wasn't alone. Knock, knock, knock. Koyo, is it alright if I step in? A voice called out from behind the door. Of course, she said, fixing her posture. The person stepped into the room. Ah, Hirotsu, is there something I can help you with? Hirotsu took a seat from across from her. So, what's our plan going forward? He asked, getting straight to business. Koyo and Hirotsu knew something was wrong but had no proof. They were trying their best to figure it out. Well, we aren't alone. It's as Octogawa said, they're on our side. Koyo said, trying to keep the conversation discreet. You never know who's lurking in the shadows. Just then, another knock came to the door. Come in, Koyo called out, and the two Octogawa siblings stepped in. Hello, Hirotsu's asked us to join you two, Octogawa said, Gin standing beside him. Come and take a seat. Koyo gestured for the two of them to sit. Gin took a seat beside Hirotsu, while Octogawa took a chair between the two couches. We're talking about Chuuya-san, right? Octogawa speaks up, wanting to figure out what they wanted to do. Yes, we got a letter from some people asking questions. We have help. Koyo said, hoping that the two could understand what she was trying to convey. I did as well, Octogawa said. If we have questions, maybe we should try speaking to Chuuya-san? Gin spoke quietly. We could, but I'm not sure if he would answer, Koyo said. I'm not sure about the rest of you, but for me at least, he's grown very distant. The others nodded along, agreeing with her. Chuuya hadn't been speaking to as many Port Mafia members as he used to. Most of the time, it was only if he needed someone, never to just talk anymore. They understood that being the boss was a busy job, but it was still strange for him. It's at least worth a try. Octogawa looked towards Koyo, giving the decision to her. You're right, it's worth a shot. Let's try. She stood, the others following suit and heading out the door. The four arrived at the top floor. It was different than how it was before. There was only guards at the door if neither Chuuya or Valorine were in the office, something that Mori had never done before. As the four of them approached the door, they heard talking. They couldn't make out any of it, but simply believed it was Valorine. That was until they heard the elevator behind them. Oh, is there something the four of you needed? What was that accent? Okay, screw it, that's Valorine's voice now. Valorine walked towards the group. Now they were confused. If Valorine was there, who was Chuuya talking to? But it did suppose that it could just be. They did suppose it could just be another mafia member. Ah, Valorine, we came to talk to Chuuya. It's been a while since we all sat down and talked together. Koyo spoke in a calm voice. Valorine nodded, walking towards the door and knocking on it for them. Chuuya heard knocking and quickly turned towards the door. When he turned back to him, he was already gone. Come on in. Come on in, Chuuya said. I don't know why I gave Chuuya such a high-pitched voice. Come on in, Chuuya said. At Chuuya's permission, Valorine pushed the door open. Oh, hey guys, is there something you need? Chuuya asked, surprised to see the group standing together in his office. If you're not too busy, we want to sit down with you. It's been a while, has it not? Koyo said, a smile on her face, but worry in her. There was no one else in the room, so who was Chuuya talking to? Chuuya paused. It has been a while. It shouldn't be a problem. Chuuya turned to Valorine, who gave him a nod. Come take a seat, Chuuya said, walking towards the set of couches for the group to sit at. Chuuya took a seat first, and the rest following. Valorine sat next to Chuuya, Gin sat next to Hirotsu, and Octogawa sat next to Koyo. So, is there any particular reasoning for this? Valorine asked, curious as if they had a larger goal in mind. Valorine, sorry Annie-san, he gets a little questiony sometimes, Chuuya said, worried Valorine would raise more questions from the four. Chuuya figured that they knew something wasn't correct. These four were some of the people Chuuya were closest with. If any of them were to notice, it would be them. The six continued to talk for a while, simply about how things had changed, Yokohama going forward and such. The four were waiting for a perfect time to ask one of their bigger questions. When the time felt right, Octagawa decided to ask the question. I mean no offense in saying this, but what's the reason for this order this morning? The four of them are worried that it might be dangerous. It might be a dangerous question to ask, but they had to. It's just for safety reasons. Nothing. Things are still in the air with them. Chuuya played off the question, answering it, but not fully giving an answer. Before the group could ask more, Valorine spoke up. It's been lovely to chat with you all, but me and Chuuya still have work to attend to. I'm sure you four do as well. Chuuya nodded. Yes, Valorine is right. We can continue this another time, yes? He said, sounding a bit sad towards having the end to a conversation. Yes, Koyo said, standing along with the others. The four quietly walked out the room with more questions than what they had gone from what they... Wow, thanks English. The four of them walked out of the room with more questions than they had going in. They left the room and they started to talk. That was strange. We asked the question and then almost immediately got asked to leave, Gins said, confused about everything. Very strange. Something definitely isn't right. But Chuuya had asked us to leave, so we should be going. Koya said, starting to walk to the elevator, and the others followed. Chuuya, I know they're your friends, but Valorine starts getting cuts off. Chuuya, you know better than that, a voice said, walking up towards Chuuya, harshly grabbing his face. I'm sorry, I didn't realize they were going to ask questions. Chuuya got cut off by a smack to the face. Don't do it again. The voice walked back into the shadows. Chuuya, are you okay? Valorine came next to Chuuya. Chuuya just stood there with his eyes wide in shock. He had disappointed him before, but never had he hit him. Was this what life was going to be like going forward? Chuuya, please speak to me. Valorine spoke quietly to Chuuya, wrapping his arms around him and giving him a hug. It's okay, I won't let him do that ever again. Chuuya looked up at Valorine. Don't make promises like that. You know what he said, neither of us have power in this room. Let's get back to work, we still have a lot to do. Chuuya said, walking towards his desk, grabbing the next piece of paperwork to work on. Valorine stood there for a second. He had come to protect Chuuya, but now he and Chuuya had been hopelessly trapped in the hands of a terrible man. What could the others do to save Chuuya? He was all alone. Others might be trying to help, but in the end, only Valorine and Chuuya knew the truth. Chapter 8. The Brightest Light. In the Armed Detective Agency. We can call Koyo from an agency phone, Kyoka. Yosono says, reassuring the girl that she has nothing to be worried about. Kyoka nods, pulling up Koyo's number to show it to the others. Kunikita quickly types it into the phone. And we discussed about what we're talking about. Anything else to add? Kunikita asked before he actually called. After getting shaking of heads, he started to call the number, placing it on speaker. This is the repetitive section. Hello? Koyo asks, picking up the phone. Hello, is this Koyo? This is the Armed Detective Agency. Kunikita replies back to her hello. Yes, this is her. Who is this? How did you get my number and what do you need? She asks, a bit confused on why the agency was calling her. Yes. Sorry, my name is Kunikita. I'm not sure if we have spoken before. Anyway, we got your number from Kyoka. She said, as for what we want, we just have a few questions. We can make it worth your time. Kunikita says. The others gathered closely to listen. Kyoka stands a bit off to the side. Koyo took a breath. Yes, I'll answer your questions. As for what you'll do worth my time, what my time is worth, we'll figure that out later, she says. After getting a nod from Rampo, he asks the next question. Amazing. Thank you so much. First, wouldn't happen to mind us what caused Mori's death? Kunikita asked, clearly having a bit of worry that she wouldn't answer. Poison, and before you ask, I don't know what kind, other than it killed him in less than 3 hours, she said, waiting for them to continue talking. Kunikida quickly covered the microphone of the phone so they could talk. 3 hours? That must be extremely weak then. That must have made him extremely weak then. Dazai said, shrugging his shoulders. Yes, I agree with Dazai. He should have been able to cure himself within that amount of time. Yosuno says, the two of them being well aware of Mori's medical experience. So, what does that tell us? Tanizaki asked, still confused about everything that was going on. Either the poison was something Mori didn't know existed, hence not being able to make a cure for it, Dazai said, taking a pause, letting Rumpo once again finish his thought. Or he had a direct connection to his death, maybe even helping plan it himself. Rumpo says, looking almost confused at the possibility that could wait in this case. Rumpo had never had so much trouble figuring out a case, but something about this was different. There was almost too many variables. It made it difficult to focus on what was really going on. He knew what the mafia most likely wanted to try to confuse him, as he wouldn't be the first to figure them out. Kunikida looks towards... Wow, okay, sorry, my English is not working today. Kunikida looks towards the ground. Looks towards the other, giving them a signal before he started talking again. I see. From our sources, we have heard that he not only did not have a funeral, but very few people saw his body. If you don't mind me asking, why would someone of his status not have a funeral? And did you get a chance to see the body? Kunikida asked, along with the rest of the agency, hoping she would answer honestly. After a brief pause, Koyo spoke. No, we didn't have a funeral, and you're correct. Not many people saw the body, but I was one of the few. She let out a breath. Would you mind if I pass the phone to Dr. Yoshino? She has some questions for you, Kunikida said. Before they had gotten onto the phone, Yoshino mentioned that if they wanted to figure out what the poison was, maybe getting some details on the body would help. Go ahead, Koyo agreed. Agreeing with her, Yoshino moved closer to the phone, a pen and paper in hand. Hello, Koyo. Yoshino paused. I have some questions about Mori's body, if you don't mind. Feel free to ask as you wish, she said, still trying to keep herself as professional as possible. What did his body look appearance-wise? Yoshino asked, ready to write down exactly what Koyo said the body looked like. He was very pale. It was unlike any other poisoning we've ever seen, so we haven't figured out what it was. Koyo figured out the best way to do that. Koyo figured out the best way to do this was to be honest. He was pale, no redness around the mouth or anything else like that. Yoshino asked, already very confused. The other agency members were confused as well. Maybe it really was a poison Mori didn't know of. Yoshino had never heard of a poison like that, so she thought it must have come from another country. No, he was simply pale. I think it killed him in around 3 hours, as I said before, Koyo said. I see. How long were you allowed to see the body? Yoshino asked. Maybe could Rumpo be right? Could Rumpo maybe have been right? Was Mori really not dead? Not long. I saw it when Chuuya brought me there, and then once again, maybe an hour later, when we brought Hirotsu. What did you guys do with the body? Rumpo told Yoshino that this would probably be a good question. It might be able to answer a few of our questions, like why they didn't have a funeral. I'm not sure. Chuuya nor Valorine never talked about what they did with the body. I just know that it was there one day and gone the next. Not a single other soul in the mafia other than the 4 of us got to see it, Koyo said. Kunikida, standing next to Yoshino, once again covered the phone on the microphone. So, what now? Kunikida said. So now what? Kunikita said, no, wanting to know if there were any last minute questions I needed to ask. I think we went through everything, Major, Yasuda said. I'm thinking the poison was from another country, so I'll look into it. She looked around the room to the others to see if there was any disagreement, which there was none. Once it seemed like they were done talking for now, Kunikita looked towards the group for a double check, then removed his hand and began to speak. Thank you, Koyo. Is there anything as of right now we can do for you? Kunikita asked, being put back on the phone. Koyo paused. Let me speak to Dazai for a second? Of course, Kunikita said, following with the shuffling in the background. Dazai walked towards the phone, placing her hand over the speaker. Can I speak to Annie-san off speaker? The others answered with a nod. Dazai turned the speaker off and picked up the phone. With the phone now off speaker, the agency members could only hear what Dazai was saying. Annie-san, you wanted to talk to me? I'm flattered, Dazai said, acting like his usual annoying self. You visited Chuuya the other day, right? She asked, jumping straight to the question. I did, Dazai said, his tone getting more serious after hearing her question. I figure you're already on it, but find out what's really going on. Chuuya passed an order this morning not to have any contact with the agency despite the truce. Koyo said, laying everything out on the table. I promise you, Annie-san, we will save him. I'll let you go. This couldn't have been a safe call for you to have. Dazai said, hanging up the phone quickly, placing it back down. Here is where the new stuff starts. Well, that was fast, Atsushi said, confused about why Dazai hung up so fast. What did she want? Rampo asked, thinking about what it might be something worth note. We have less time than we thought, Dazai said, looking towards Rampo, who nodded at him seemingly understandingly. So, what's going on? Tanizaki asked, still very confused, getting a few nods from the others who were also confused. Chuuya's cracking down on the rules despite the truce. Just this morning, the mafia was given a no-contact order with us, Dazai said, watching it click in the others' minds. But that makes no sense, Atsushi said, Kyoka nodding to agree with him. What makes sense and what doesn't make sense doesn't matter. What makes sense and what doesn't make sense doesn't matter. What matters is that we have to find a way to contact anyone in the mafia. There's no way to contact anyone in the mafia unless we want to risk their life, Yoshino said, letting out a sigh. I think we're going to need some outside help, Rampo says, grabbing his phone out of his pocket. Who do you have in mind, Rampo-san? Atsushi asks, but instead of giving an answer, Rampo starts to dial the number instead. Immediately, the person on the other end of the line picks up almost immediately. Hey, can you come to the agency? Rampo said to the person on the phone. A brief pause. Awesome, see you soon. Rampo then hangs up the phone. Well, I have one person on their way to help. And who was that? Yoshino says, eyeing Rampo. Rampo shrugs his shoulders. Should we ask that one girl for help too? She works in the cafe, right? Kenji asks, looking towards Atsushi. You mean Lucy? Right? We can ask her. Atsushi says, giving a shrug, looking towards Dazai, who nods at him. Alright, I'll head down and see if she's there, Atsushi says, waving off the others before heading out the door. See you in a little bit, Atsushi-kun, Dazai says, waving the boy off. You think Po and Lucy will be good help? He says, turning to Rampo. Yeah, I think they could be useful. Plus, if we have them on our side, we can reach out to Francis if we need to, Rampo says, giving a shrug and pretty much thinking it was worth a try. Atsushi quickly made his way downstairs, pushing the door open to the cafe. Ah, good morning, the cafe manager calls out to Atsushi. What can I do for you? He asks while cleaning the cups. Good morning, is Lucy here? Atsushi asks, looking around to see if he could find her. She left a little while ago to run some errands, but she should be back any time now. Just as he said that, the door to the cafe opened. I'm back, Lucy called out, her eyes landing on Atsushi. What are you doing here? She says, bringing the box of stuff to the counter. We are just wondering if you're willing to help us? Atsushi asks, with an unsure smile on his face. By we, I'm guessing meet the agency. What could you guys possibly need my help with? Lucy says, giving him a glare. Please, Lucy, it's hard to explain. Rampo or Dazai-kun or Dazai-san will probably explain everything upstairs. Atsushi says, pleading with her to help. It seems I really need your help, Lucy. The manager speaks up. You should go ahead and help, he says, giving her a nod. Fine, let's go, Lucy says, walking out of the doors of the cafe, Atsushi following her. Bye, Atsushi calls out as he steps out. Thank you so much for helping us, Lucy, Atsushi says, smiling towards her. Shut up, I haven't totally agreed yet, Lucy says, rolling her eyes as the two of them make their way to the agency doors. Atsushi walks into the agency along with Lucy, both shocked to see Po. Atsushi because he had got there so fast, and Lucy, well, she hadn't seen him in quite some time. Hey, welcome back, Dazai says with a smile on his face. Yay, you got Lucy-chan to come, Kenji says, having a wide smile on his face. Kyoka simply just gives her a light smile. Edgar? Lucy says, clearly confused about why he was here. Oh, hello, Lucy. It's been a while. I don't know how to do Po's voice, so sorry about that. Po said, Oh, hello, Lucy. It's been some time. It's been a while. Geez, English. Po says, giving a slight smile to the girl. Yeah, it has been, she says, looking kind of sad while thinking about the times in the guild. Anyways, Rampo says, standing on top of his desk, let's talk about our plan. Do you have one? Yoshino asks, an amused smile on her face. Meh, we'll figure it out as we go, Rampo says, shrugging his shoulders, moving to sit on top of his desk. Well, first, how do we even get into the mafia? Kunikida asks, figuring that it's something they should probably figure out first. Huh? Isn't that obvious? That's what her ability is for, Rampo says, pointing to Lucy. We go into Annie's playroom. Tanizaki and Lucy stay on the outside so that they can sneak in. Rampo says, looking towards Dazai to see if he has anything to add. I think either me or Kyoka should stay outside too. We know the mafia building the best. We wouldn't want Lucy or Tanizaki wandering around trying to figure out where to go. Dazai says, looking towards Kyoka to see what she would rather. Is it alright if you do it, Dazai-san? Kyoka quietly asks, not wanting to have to see much of the inside of that place again. Yeah, I can do that, don't worry, Dazai says, giving Kyoka a reassuring smile. Right. We'll use mine and Tadazaki's ability to get us into the building. But wouldn't you think they'd pick up on an ability user? Lucy says, crossing her arms, already annoyed. Also, Po starts, you never told us why we're doing this. Po says, looking towards Rampo for an answer. Oh, yeah, I don't want to explain, someone else can, Rampo says, leaning on his hands. I'll explain to you, Yoshino says, shaking her head at Rampo before turning to Lucy and Po. Basically, Mori has supposedly died, but we don't believe it. And either way, something is odd with the new boss. We want to figure out what. Yoshino says, giving them a quick rundown of the situation. I see. Thank you for explaining, Yoshino, Po says, giving a light smile. Yes, thanks. Now, back to my question, Lucy says, looking towards Dazai, since he said he knew about the mafia. Last time I checked, no, they think they're too strong for that or whatever, Dazai said, giving a shrug. Yeah, we don't have to worry about that, but what about the guards around the boss's office? Kyoka says she had only been there once or twice, but she remembers it always being pretty heavily guarded. I can always deal with that when it comes to it, Darzai said, giving a thumbs up. I see. We came up with the whole plan? The president says, stepping into the main part of the office. Oh, my apologies, President. We forgot to inform you, Kunikita says, bowing towards him. It's alright. I heard most of it, Fukazawa says, looking towards Rumpo. Will I be needed for this? You shouldn't be, but if you want to come along, you're free to, Rumpo says, thinking about what could happen to the execution of the plan. Lucy cuts into his thinking. Okay, we get it. We get into the mafia's building. We go up to the boss's office. Cool. Then what? I assume. What are we supposed to do when we're there? Lucy says, looking unamused at Rumpo's childness. Meh? We kidnap Mr. Fancy Hat and take him inside Annie's room. Rumpo says, looking towards Darzai to get his opinion. Sure, that can work. If something goes wrong, I can always come up with a plan on the spot, Darzai says, giving a slight nod. We can always come out of her room to help you guys out, Kenji says, clasping his hands together and a smile on his face. Alright, so when do we execute our plan? Kunikita said, ready to clear his schedule for that day. Well, as far as I'm aware, there should be no big meetings happening at the Mafia, so any day works. Darzai shrugs. The earlier the better, Rumpo says, looking towards Poe and Lucy. When are you two free? I am free whenever, Poe says, willing to help Rumpo with whatever he needs. Same as Poe, I'm sure the old man downstairs won't mind, Lucy says, shrugging. Well, it's Tuesday, how do we feel about tomorrow? Yoshino says, if they want it to be early, why not the next day? That works, let's plan for that, Rumpo says, nodding. Alright, if we're going to do this, we need a good night's sleep. The president speaks up, walking towards the middle of the room. Everyone, including you two, he said, looking towards Poe and Lucy. Before going back to addressing the whole room, go home and get a good night's sleep so we're all ready. Understood? The president finishes. Yes, sir. He is heard throughout the room, the members of the agency bowing towards him. We should all meet here at 7 so we can go over the plan, Rumpo says, jumping off the desk and pulling a snack out of his pocket. And with that plan... Hang on. And with that, we have a plan. We'll see you bright and early in the morning. Bright and early. We'll see you all bright and early, Yoshino says, walking towards the door of the agency. Bye guys, Kenji says, leaving the agency shortly after Yoshino. Slowly, the other members of the agency trickle out of the room until just Darzai and Rumpo are left. Worried about tomorrow? Rumpo asks, not making eye contact with Darzai, rather looking towards the wall. Yeah, but I trust our ability to work together, and I trust Chuuya, Darzai says, standing up and heading towards the door. Darzai was about to step out of the agency when Rumpo called. Hey, just make sure you're ready for any possibility tomorrow, okay? There's always a chance our plan could fall through. Rumpo looks towards Darzai, doubt in his eyes, worried about the endless possibilities of what could happen tomorrow. Like I said, I'm sure everything will go alright, Darzai said, walking out of the agency, shutting the door behind him. Rumpo threw away the packaging of his snack. Once he was sure Darzai was far enough from the area, he opened the door and began to go home himself. The next morning, Rumpo walked into the agency at 6 o'clock in the morning. Rumpo looked around, no one else was there yet, maybe except the president, but he wasn't sure. Rumpo walked over to his seat, grabbing a snack before he sat down. A million thoughts ran through Rumpo's mind last night. None of them had any idea of what would happen today, but all Rumpo knew was that no matter what, they had to figure out what was happening. Rumpo looked up as he heard from heard the door to the president's office opened. He watched as he walked into the main room. "Good morning, Rumpo," the president said, giving a nod to the boy. "Good morning, President." Rumpo gave his back to him. "Are you ready for today?" Fukazawa asks, looking towards the boy. Rumpo paused, not answering for a few seconds before he spoke up again. "As ready as I can be, I suppose," Rumpo said, making eye contact with Fukazawa. Just then, the main door to the agency opened again. "Good morning, Rumpo, President," Yoshino said, walking into the office. "Good morning," Kenji said, happily coming through the door, a wide smile on his face. "Good morning, Yoshino, Kenji," the president said, giving both a nod. "Are you planning on coming along for the mission?" Rumpo asked him, looking up towards him. "Do you think you'll need me there?" Fukazawa says, looking towards Rumpo, awaiting his answer. "I think we'll be alright, but it might be better for you to stay here," Rumpo says, giving the president a reassuring nod. "Alright, let me know if you change your mind. I'll be going to my office now. Feel free to come in and get me if you need me," Fukazawa said, turning and walking back towards the office. "Yoshino-san," Kenji said, walking over to her desk. What is it, Kenji?" Yoshino says, looking towards the boy next to her. "How do you think it's going to go today?" "I think it's going to go good," Kenji says, clasping his hands together. "I'm sure today will go good as well, Kenji," Yoshino says, smiling at the boy. Despite her smile, she was still worried about what could happen. I mean, who wouldn't be? At about 6:30, 2 more people walked in through the door. "Good morning, people. Good morning, everyone," Atsushi said, walking through the door. Kyoka followed behind him. "Good morning, Atsushi and Kyoka," Kenji said, smiling towards the pair. Atsushi walked over to his desk, Kyoka following along with him. "I'm surprised Kunikita-kun isn't here yet," Atsushi said, simply just talking out loud. Just then, Kunikita walked through the door. "Speak of the devil," Yoshino says, giving a light laugh. "Good morning, everyone," Kunikita says, swiftly walking towards his desk. "Is there anything we need to do ahead of time?" he asks, looking towards Rumpo. "Nope, we're just waiting for everyone to show up," Rumpo says, keeping a smile on his face despite his inner worries. "Alright," Kunikita said, taking a seat at his desk, waiting for the rest of the members to show up. At about 6:50, Poe and Lucy walked through the door. "Good morning," Poe says, walking over to Rumpo. "Is everyone here?" Lucy asks, looking around the office. The rest of the members are here. The rest of the members are here. Look around. Just starts at being late as normal, Kunikita says, rolling his eyes. "I mean, he's not technically late," Kyoka says, shrugging her shoulders at the older man. The group decide to wait for Dazai. That while they wait for Dazai, they may as well go over the plan one last time. "Alright, so if you excuse me, I'll start to go over our plan," Kunikita says, standing up to get everyone's attention. Once everyone is paying attention, he starts. First of all, us, minus Tanizaki, Dazai, and Lucy, will go to Annie's room. The 3 outside Annie's room will head to the Port Mafia building. Once they're close enough, Tanizaki will use his ability to hide the 3 of them. Dazai will lead them to Chuuya's office, and they will attempt to question Chuuya peacefully. He paused. "Sounds right?" He asks, looking towards Rumpo. "Yup," Rumpo said, giving him a thumbs up. Just then, Dazai steps into the agency. "I'm not late, am I?" Dazai says, a playful grin on his face. You're actually just on time, for once," Kunikita said, crossing his arms. "Well, should we get going?" Yoshino said, moving to stand up. "Alright, I'll let you all in Annie's room," Lucy said, looking over to Rumpo, waiting for him to say that they were good to go. Rumpo gives her a nod. She used her ability, and the members of the agency plus Poe were now inside Annie's room, minus Tanizaki and Dazai, of course. And then there were 3, Dazai said, walking towards the door. Off we go, I suppose, Tanizaki said, clearly worried about what was going to happen. Lucy just silently followed along, not having much to say. The trio made their way towards the Port Mafia building. Dazai took them through ways that even the Mafia was trying to keep an eye. That even if the Mafia was trying to keep an eye on the agency, they would be hard to find. All right, Dazai said, stopping. This is as close as we can get without light snow, Dazai says, looking towards Tanizaki. Tanizaki nodded, activating his ability. Just so you guys know, people can still hear us even if we're hidden by light snow, Tanizaki said, looking towards the other 2 who made sure they knew. Both of them nodded, before Dazai continued to lead them towards the Mafia building. After walking around for about 5 minutes, Dazai turned to the group, shushing them. He whispered, "There's a back door that shouldn't be guarded at this time. We can get in through there." Dazai started to lead them towards the door. Once they reached the door, Dazai swiftly picked the lock. Dazai turned around to Dazai turned around, turned to the others, giving them a thumbs up before pushing the door open. Lucy and Tanizaki were a bit shocked when they stepped into the building. Tanizaki had been in the Mafia building, but only one part of it. Lucy had never seen it. Both of them looked around. The floor they were on was pretty open and looked like any other building. There wasn't much in the area except for a food area along with a few elevators and staircases. While the other two were talking in the building, Dazai was more focused on the people. During Dazai's time in the Mafia, there would be many more people guarding the ground floor, but here there were maybe 20 at most. Dazai turned around to the other 2, carefully closing the door. He pointed towards the stairs and elevator, giving them a choice. Lucy didn't really want to walk up the stairs, but she knew it would draw attention to them if they took the elevator, so she pointed towards the stairs. Tanizaki nodded, silently saying that he agreed with the pair. Dazai nodded, walking towards the pair, walking in front of the pair towards the stairs. The trio trailed up and The trio trekked up the seemingly never-ending staircase. "How much longer is this?" Lucy whispered, tired of all the stairs. "We're almost there, just one more case," Dazai said, turning towards her, flashing her a smile. Lucy closed her eyes as she just kept trekking up the stairs. After forever, they arrive at the top. Dazai turns towards them, putting his finger in front of his face and to signal them to be quiet. "We're here," he whispered, turning back around, slowly pushing the door open. To Dazai's surprise, there was no guards at the door. Not that Dazai was complaining, it just meant it was easier for them. "Just through this door," Dazai whispered, leading the others to the door of Chuuya's office. "Should we let the others know?" Tanizaki whispered, just wanting to make sure everyone was on the same page. "No, it should be fine. I'm sure Rumpo knows everything going on," Lucy whispered, rolling her eyes, knowing how smart the weirdo was. Dazai slowly opened the door to Chuuya's office. Chuuya looked up at the person at his side seemingly disappearing. "Huh? Valorine, are you back already?" Chuuya asked, called towards the door. "Apologies, but we're not Valorine," Dazai says as Tanizaki undid light snow, revealing them. "What are you doing here?" Chuuya yelled, standing up from the desk. "Nakahara-san," Tanizaki tried to plead. "We just want to talk to you. What's going on?" Meanwhile, with Valorine was sent off to run some errands. Nothing grand, just some snacks, paper, and whatever else was on the list. He was on his way back when he suddenly got a phone call. Valorine pulled out his phone out of his pocket. Once he saw the caller, he immediately answered. "Hello?" Valorine said to the other person on the line. "You need a return, now," he said, leaving no room for discussion. Of course, Valerian said, quickly hanging up the phone and placing it in his pocket. He rushed as fast as he could towards the mafia building. Back in Chuuya's office. There was nothing going on, Chuuya said, doing air quotes around going on. Chuuya just wanted them to leave. He couldn't handle them being here. Not right now. Just get out, Chuuya said, slamming his hands on the table. Don't make me get rid of you. Oh, quit it with the nice guy. Quit it with the tough guy act, Lucy yelled right back at him. She could tell that he was trying his best to keep himself together. Just tell us what's going on. Chuuya, please, Darzai said, looking at Chuuya with eyes that Chuuya just wanted to fall into. Chuuya was about to respond before being cut off by the door opening. Chuuya, is everything... Valerian noticed who was in the room. He only recognized Darzai, but he knew the others that were with him. Why are you here? Valerian said, ready to protect Chuuya no matter what. We just want to talk to Chuuya, Lucy said, putting a hand on her hip. She was done with all of this already. Well, you're not supposed to be here, so leave, Valerian said, stepping closer to them. Calm down, Valerian, he said, standing to where the trio couldn't see him but hear him. Tanizaki and Lucy were unsure of who it was, but Darzai knew. He could never forget that voice, ever. You, Darzai said, turning to where the voice was. Darzai. Chuuya paused, waiting for Darzai to turn towards him. Please leave. Please. Chuuya said as his eyes glossed over with tears. Darzai said before getting cut off. Darzai, please. Chuuya said, looking Darzai right in the eyes. Darzai had never seen such pain in his partner's eyes. All right. He paused, turning towards Tanizaki and Lucy. Let's go, he said, starting to walk towards the door. Darzai, we can't just leave, Tanizaki said, not wanting to disappoint the others. Let's go, Darzai said, glaring at Tanizaki. You heard him. Let's go, Lucy said, looking towards Tanizaki, clearly also distressed about the situation. The trio walked out of the office, feeling a glum feeling around the whole building. Chuuya sat down, laying his head on the desk. Tears began to fall out of his eyes before he even had a chance to stop them. Valerian walked over to Chuuya, giving him light pats on the head. It's okay, Chuuya, he said, smiling at him. Don't be stressed, Chuuya. Everything is still going according to plan, he said, grinning at the pair before walking out of the room. Darzai, Tanizaki called, trying to chase after the other ones outside the Port Mafia building. Lucy grabbed his arms. Stop, let him go. Let's return to the agency and tell the others what happened, Lucy said, knowing that Darzai probably needed his space at the moment. Yeah, he paused, watching Darzai walk away. Let's go, he said, turning away from Darzai and towards the direction of the agency. Both Lucy and Tanizaki knew they had a long explanation ahead of them. Chapter 10. The door is shut. Lucy and Tanizaki made their way back to the agency building. How do we even explain this to the others? Tanizaki said, as he walked up the stairs of the office. We'll just have to try our best, I guess, Lucy said, shrugging her shoulders as they made their way into the office. Once the two were in the office, Lucy asked, should I bring them out or should we go in there? Before Tanizaki could reply, the president walked out. You can bring them back out here. It'll be easier to discuss that way. Lucy nodded, quickly undoing her ability and letting the others out. Hey, how did it go? Atsushi asked as soon as they were out of her ability. Where's Darzai? Yoshino asked, only seeing Lucy and Tanizaki. He walked off, Lucy said. When she noticed that the others were confused, she continued. He needed some time to think by himself, she said, crossing her arms. So, what did you figure out? Kyoka asked, worried about Chuuya. Not much other than there's someone else behind the scenes, Tanizaki explained, trying to make the most sense he could. Do you know who? Rumpo immediately asked, asked him, stepping closer. No, but Dazai seemed to. I'm not even sure when he's coming back, though. Tanizaki said, looking away and feeling bad for not being able to give the others more information. It's fine. We'll just wait for him to get back, Kunikita said, pushing up his glasses. Well, I suppose I take it that you didn't get to talk to Nakahara? Fukuzawa says, looking towards the pair. Well, we kind of did, but no, not really. He clearly didn't want us there, Lucy says, remembering the way Chuuya looked. So we know nothing until Dazai comes back, Yoshino says, looking at the pair, slightly disappointed but understanding that they did their best. That's fine. Dazai's probably coming up with something right now. He'll be back soon, Rampo mumbled while walking over towards his desk to get some snacks, Po following him. So we wait? Kenji said, skipping over to his desk and looked at his plant. Yup, Yoshino said, walking over to the clinic, deciding to check over what she has. Atsushi and Kyoko made their way to his desk. Lucy followed, not knowing what to do. Did Chuuya look sad? Kyoko mumbled to Lucy, not making eye contact with her. Lucy looked at the girl next to her. She let out a sigh. Chuuya will be alright. Next time we'll save him for sure. She smiled, looking at Kyoko, trying her best to be comforting, but not being very good at it. Right. Lucy's right, Kyoko-chan. Don't worry, Atsushi said, also flashing the girl a smile. Kyoko felt better, but at the same time she still couldn't help her worry. Chuuya was someone she really cared for. What would she do if he was gone? The president walked over to Rampo and Po. What do you think our next step should be? He questions, wanting to make sure that there was still a purpose in investigating this. Rampo let out a sigh. I think most likely we should try to find a way to stop whoever is controlling Chuuya and Valerian, he said, looking towards Fukuzawa. Alright, once Dazai returns we'll discuss this, Fukuzawa said, nodding before walking away. I'm sure you'll be able to figure out what to do, Rampo, Po whispered. It might not seem like much, but it meant a lot to Rampo. He was struggling to figure out just what they could do. He knew they had to do something, but what? The members of the agency sat around doing seemingly nothing but worry for many hours. A lot of them were wondering where Dazai was and when he was going to return. After Dazai left the other two at the mafia building, he immediately ran off. He heard Tanizaki yell at him to come back, but he didn't even bother to turn around. Where was he going? He didn't know, and it didn't matter. Chuuya was being controlled by him, and there was nothing he could do about it. His brain still couldn't wrap around it. Just why? What was he trying to do? What was his ploy? What did the man want? Dazai thought and thought, but he could never find an answer. Dazai felt lost, so he went to the place he knew would give him clarity. He made his way to the cemetery slowly. Once he reached it, he walked over to Oda's grave. Hi, Odasaku. It's been a while since I last stopped by. Dazai moves to sit against the grave. Dazai sat there for what felt like hours, mindlessly talking to his friend, when it suddenly hit him. I should head back to the agency. Thanks for the chat, Dazai said, pushing himself off of the ground and walking out of the cemetery towards the agency. Dazai made his way back to the agency building pretty slowly, even though he had started to develop a plan. His brain was lost in thought. He made his way up to the stairs, slowly pushing the door open. Dazai-san, Atsushi said, immediately popping up and rushing over to him. Are you okay? Yeah, Dazai said, giving a slight smile to the kid. Well, Dazai, welcome back, Kunikita said, giving him a nod. Rampo walked over to Dazai, gesturing him to come over to his desk. Rumpo waved over to Dazai, gesturing him to walk over to his desk. Dazai quickly walked his way over to his desk. "Hey, Rumpo," Dazai says, sliding his hands into his pocket. "So, who is it?" Rumpo asks, looking Dazai straight into the eye. "Who is who?" Dazai asks, playing dumb. "You know what I'm talking about, Dazai," Rumpo says, giving him a serious look. "It's exactly who we thought," Dazai mumbled, still in slight disbelief. "Crap, seriously? Now what?" Rumpo said, looking down at his desk. "I don't want to intrude, but maybe we could talk to the others that might help. Maybe talking to the others might help, or even finding someone else that can help us," Poe whispered, worried about speaking up. Outside help might not be a bad idea, but who would get involved? Rumpo thought that not many people would want to get involved with the mafia if they didn't have to. About 20 minutes later, the whole of the agency was in a meeting. "So, do we know who the big bad is?" Yosuno said, waiting for them to say who. "Yeah, but you aren't going to be happy about who it is," Dazai says, looking towards the table. Who is it? Surely it couldn't be that bad," Atsushi says, looking a bit unsure if he wants to actually know. Rumpo lets out a sigh. "Mori," he says, letting that sink in with the others. Yosuno is the first to regain herself. "What? But everyone said he died of poisoning. There's no way." She said she didn't believe. She says it as she didn't believe that monster could get any worse. "Why? What does he want?" Tanizaki asks, seemingly shocked, despite being there. "We don't know, but it can't be anything good," Dazai says, still confused on what his motive should be. "Do you think that he might have in order to gain more trust in the mafia? There's many people who dislike Mori, but Chuuya seems to be more liked," the president said, chipping into the conversation. "That could be possible. I wouldn't put it past him," Dazai says, shrugging. "Definitely wouldn't put it past him. That freak of a man," Yosuno says, disgust in her voice. "Whatever his motive is, we need to still help Chuuya ni," Kyoka whispers, still wanting to make sure to save him. "Don't worry, Kyoka. We won't let him be hurt anymore. We'll figure something out," Atsushi says, trying to comfort the girl. "Chuuya won't just leave though, so what do we do?" Lucy asks, wanting to be done with this meeting. "We kidnap him?" Rumpo said, as if it was the most casual thing ever. "We can't just kidnap the Port Mafia boss," Kunikita scolds Rumpo. Rumpo simply rolls his eyes. "I hate that I'm even suggesting this, but maybe we should reach out to Francis. I have him reach out to the mafia, strike up a deal they couldn't refuse. Then we have a way to get inside," Lucy suggested, even though she thought it was a dumb idea. "Wait, that could work, as long as we come up with a good enough deal," Dazai says, leaning back into his chair, thinking this over. "Let's do it. We can always figure out what the deal is later," Rumpo says, strolling towards the door. "I guess we're leaving? Wait, where are we going?" Atsushi asks, looking at the other in the room. "Why not?" Yosuno shrugs, getting up to follow Rumpo out the room. Ooh, this sounds like fun," Kenji says, walking out. Slowly, they made their way down the streets of Yokohama. "Where are they located?" Rumpo asks, looking at Atsushi. "I can lead us there," Atsushi says, giving him and Kyoka leading in front of the group. Kyoka and Atsushi led their way through the streets of Yokohama and where Francis's place of work was. "Wow, that's a pretty big building," Tanizaki says, taking in the size of the building. "We just broke into the mafia like 5 hours ago and it was bigger than this," Lucy says, laughing at Tanizaki. Tanizaki just looks away, embarrassed. "Anyway, let's head on in," Yosuno says as their group begins as their group begins to walk to the door. Huh? What are you guys doing here? Lucia, I forgot her name, so I'm just calling her Lucia. Is that how humans... I don't know, just the smart chick from the guild, okay. Lucia says she happened to be by the door. Lucy? Poe? She was shocked to see them in more than the others. Is Francis here? She asked, wanting to make sure they caught him. Oh, yes, do you need to speak to him? She asked, smiling at the group. Yeah, we have something pretty important to discuss. She said, nodding at her. Alright, you guys should be free. He should be free right now. I can take you guys up there, she says, gesturing for them to follow her. The group follows her up the stairs where Francis is. Many of the agency members were surprised by the look of the building. Lucia knocks on the door. Sir, members of the agency are here to speak to you. After a pause, he speaks up. All right, let them in now. Let them in now. After getting permission, she pushed the door open. Wow, it's a whole party. What can I do for you? He asks as the group makes their way into the office. They could already tell this was going to be a long meeting. Chapter 11. Oh wow, a whole party. What can I do for you? Francis asks the group as the group makes their way into the office. Hello, she speaks up first, having known Francis more closely than the other members. We were wondering if you would be willing to help us out? She asks, a bit worried about his answer. Help you out? With what? Francis replied, a bit suspicious of the group. We need your help in stopping the port mafia. Dazai speaks up, shocking some of the others due to his cold tone. You need my help stopping the mafia? And why is that? He asks, eyeing Dazai. You're familiar with Chuuya Nakahara, correct? Dazai pauses, waiting for Francis's reply. Francis simply just nods, encouraging him to go on. He needs help. You don't like Mori, and neither do we. We need your help to take him down. Even though Dazai didn't fully trust Francis, he knew that the only way they were going to get him to agree was to lay out almost everything. I admit I don't like the guy, but going against the mafia? Dangerous business here, he said, shifting in his chair slightly. Lucy lets out a sigh. She was so done with this man. Oh, come on, Francis. You wouldn't be in any physical danger. Plus, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose anymore? Lucy says, looking at him, her arms crossed. Of course I have something to lose. I worked hard to get in this place, you know, dear Lucy. Francis smiled at the girl. In return, Lucy just looked away from him. If I may, Poe said, continuing after Francis's nod. What's going on in the mafia could risk this place, if not everyone in Yokohama being destroyed. None of us want that, and that's why we came to ask for your help. Poe gave a pleading look to Francis, hoping that he would agree. I suppose if my master architect said that I should help, I suppose I could help. What's your plan? Francis says, looking back towards members of the agency. Rumpo steps forward. The plan? To strike a deal with... To have you strike up a deal they couldn't refuse. If you make the deal, it could give us a way in. Rumpo says, looking towards Dazai to let him finish explaining. Dazai takes a hint. If they're unaware that Poe is, I guess, a friend to us. If you make us a deal, we could go in Poe's book, grab Chuuya, and get him out of there. Dazai says, explaining the rest of the plan to him. And this deal they can't refuse? What is it? Francis said, starting to warm up to them a bit more. That's the plan, at least, Kunikita said, explaining the deal to Francis. Alright, I can work with that. Anything else I should know? he asks, wanting to make sure he has everything he needs. Yes, Mori is no longer the mafia boss. Chuuya has taken his place, but Chuuya is being manipulated by him. Yoshino expresses to Francis, concern clear in her voice. I see. I'll reach out first thing tomorrow morning. Does that work? Francis asks, wanting to get to sleep as it was pretty late. Maybe do it in a day or two? Maybe wait a few days? Do it in 2. Make sure that you don't get suspicious. Is that okay, Dazai? Rampo says, wanting to making sure Dazai thought that Chuuya would be okay while they waited. Chuuya's strong. He'll be alright. Dazai says, turning around, ready to walk out the room. Alright, I'll let you know what they say, Francis says as the group walks out of the room. It's pretty late. I say we should all go home, Yoshino says, looking towards the others for their opinions. Yeah, probably not a bad idea, Tanizaki agrees with her, nodding his head. Those who lived at the agency dorms waved each other goodbye as they returned to their own rooms. Kyoka-chan, is everything alright? Atsushi looked towards the girl, worried about how she'll be holding up. Kyoka doesn't say anything for a few seconds. Yeah, if Dazai says that Chuuya is fine, then I'll just have to trust him, she says, looking to the ground, seeming to not even believe her own words. Let's head to bed. Atsushi says, not really sure what to do in this situation. Kyoka nodded and went to get ready for bed. 2 days later. Sir? Lucia asks, walking into Francis's office. Is something the matter? He asks, looking up at her. The phone call? She says, not wanting to make sure he didn't forget. Yes. He reaches into his pocket and grabs out his phone. Bling, bling. Chuuya looks away from the phone, looks towards the phone confused, but picks it up anyway. Hello, who is this? He asks, confused on how this person even got the mafia's number. Hi, this is Fitzgerald. I wanted to chat about some potential business plans, Francis said, smiling on his... Francis said, smiling on his face, even though Chuuya couldn't see it. I see. What kind of business are you talking about? Chuuya asks, seeing Mori out of the corner of the room, out of the corner of his eye. Wow, thanks, English. Mori comes over, gesturing Chuuya to put it on speaker so he can hear him as well. Chuuya quickly does so. As you know, many members of the guild are still in Japan. I think that we could strike up a nice favor system. Favor system, no? Francis says, looking across the way to Lucia, who nods at him, quietly nodding, telling him he's doing good. I think that's an interesting idea. How would you feel about meeting up in person to express more thoroughly? Chuuya asks, trying his best to ignore Mori next to him. Alright, how does later today sound? I'm sure we're both very busy. Francis asks, wanting to have this meeting as soon as possible. While he didn't know the full situation, he knew something was brewing and he didn't like the idea of that. That should work. How does 5 sound? Chuuya says, looking towards Mori, who gave him a nod. Sure, that works fine with me. See you then. Francis says, waiting for Chuuya to hang up the phone, which he does so relatively quickly. Lucia? Yes, sir? She pops her head up, surprised at being called. If there's anything for my schedule for 5, clear it. I don't care what it is, he says, moving out of his chair and walking out of the office. Lucia quickly gets to work, making sure he's free. Crap. I only have Poe and Lucy's number. Whatever. Francis says before quickly texting Poe. I have a meeting with them at 5 tonight. Alright, let us know how it goes. Rampo, dear. So that one line just popped into my head and I had to... Okay. Rampo, dear. Poe says, looking towards Rampo. Yeah, Poe? Rampo replies, slightly muffled due to the food in his mouth. Here. Poe shows Rumpo the text from Francis. Francis gave him a thumbs up before finishing his food. Hey, Francis got a meeting for 5. Rumpo yells, startling some of the members. But they quickly gave Rumpo a nod to tell him that they heard him. Huh? The guild wants to strike a deal with us. How interesting. Mori says, a large grin covering his face. Yeah, what do you think about the deal? Should we accept? Chuuya asks, not wanting to not get in trouble with Mori by making the wrong decision. Yeah, let's do it. It'll add some fun after all, Mori says, walking away, caring less about anything Chuuya had to add. 8 hours later, Port Mafia headquarters. Hello, welcome to the Port Mafia. I'll take you to the meeting room, Chuuya says, greeting Francis at the door. Why, thank you, he replies, following her to the meeting room. They make their way to the room. Once there, Chuuya knocks on the door, waiting for confirmation that they can enter. Once she hears the come in from Chuuya, she pushes the door open, letting Francis step inside before excusing herself. Welcome, it's a pleasure to have you here, Chuuya says, walking towards Francis, offering her his hand to shake. Francis takes the hand and shakes it, and quickly shakes it. It's a pleasure finally meeting you in person, he says as Chuuya guides him to the seat. Well, now, about my business plan, it's quite simple really. All I want is for the guild and the mafia to work closely together. With your influence in Japan and ours in America, I think we could make both of our organizations even stronger. Francis smiles at the man across from him. Francis had always been excellent at making business deals. I see. A way to improve both of our organizations. How can I say no to something like that? But I must ask, how can I be sure you won't attack Yokohama once again? Chuuya asks. At the end of the day, he wanted to make sure that his city was safe. I assure you, Yokohama will be fine. I apologize for what we did in the past, but many of our members, including myself, have grown to like this city. Francis, in reality, didn't really know how many of the guild members were doing, but Chuuya didn't need to know that. And how would we be improving each other's strength? Chuuya was still a bit confused on what Francis was trying to do here. We can help each other out and keep what's ours. I know that as a port city, you have many smugglers that attempt to take over your property. The guild has similar issues. If we combine our forces and become more powerful, those people will decide it's better to butt off, no? At this point, Francis was pretty much pulling stuff out his ass, but as long as Chuuya agreed, it didn't matter. Chuuya sat in there in silence for a few seconds before looking up towards Francis, a smile on his face. Okay, I can agree to this deal. Both of the men rose, shaking their hands once again to agree on the deal. Pleasure doing business with you, Francis says, a large smile on his face. And you as well, Chuuya says before Hiretsu walks into the room. Sir, I'll escort you out, he says, quickly waiting for Francis to follow him, which he does so quickly. We'll make sure to reach out again, he says as he walks out the room. Once Francis was out of the room, Chuuya let out a breath he was unaware he was holding. Chuuya just stood there for a while, breathing. For once, he was completely alone, something he hadn't had in a while. He couldn't help but smile. Mori might not realize it, but Chuuya did. While not at first, this meeting confirmed it to him. Francis was with the agency, and the agency out to help him. He was worried they'll get hurt. He was worried about them getting hurt, yes, geez, the motorcycles are bad here. He was worried about them getting hurt, yes, but he couldn't help but be happy about the idea that he was going to be saved. Chapter 12. The True End. Over the course of the next few days, the agency and the crew began to work on their plan. To them, it had to work. They had no other option. This was their last chance to save Chuuya and Valorine. Rumpo, are you still sure this will work? Dazai and Rumpo had stayed behind in the meeting room after everyone else had left. Dazai, Rumpo looked up at him. I promise you, we will save him. Rumpo attempted to give a reassuring smile to the man. Alright, Dazai said, standing to make his way out of the room. Yosuna had been waiting for Dazai to leave the room, so once he was down the hallway, she slipped into the room. Oh, Yosuna, Rumpo said excitedly. Rumpo, she began. I know, I told him it would be okay last time, and it wasn't, but I assure you we won't fail this time. I won't let it, Rumpo exclaimed, slamming his hands onto the table. Yosuna gave him a nod, smiling at him. She slowly stepped out of the room. Once she left, Rumpo sat back down, placing his head on the table. At least I hope it'll work, he mumbles. He knew he was smart. He knew Dazai was smart. There wasn't a doubt in his mind that this would work. But he couldn't stop his mind from wondering, what if everything did go wrong again? He already failed Dazai and Chuuya once. Who's to say it won't happen again? Before Rumpo could get too lost in his own thoughts, Po walked in, gently shutting the door behind him and coming to sit next down to Rumpo. Po hesitantly wrapped his arms around him. Your plan will work perfectly fine. I know it will. Po wanted to reaffirm him, even if he knew he wasn't very good at it. Rumpo couldn't help but be thankful for Po. He also couldn't help but leave a small smile. He also couldn't help the small smile on his face. It was game day, or, well, the day of the plan. Rumpo and Po arrived at the agency quite early, being almost 2 hours early. Po hesitantly grabbed his hand, gently squeezing it. It's all going to be okay. Rumpo didn't trust himself quite enough to give a verbal response, so he simply nodded, squeezing Po's hand back. Po led Rumpo over to his seat, grabbing him a snack. Po smiled at him, and Rumpo smiled back. He couldn't be more grateful for Po. After a little less than an hour, Dazai stepped into the agency. Good morning, he said, almost dragging himself over to his desk. They had to save Chuuya. He had to save Chuuya. But what if they didn't? No, they had to. There was no other option. Not so long after, the rest of the group showed up. They still had about an hour before they left. Atsushi was, as normal, panicking. But Kyoki-tan, what if they suspect Po and take the book away? They probably know about his ability. Atsushi pointed out a pretty good point. Po will be fine, Rumpo shouted across the room, tired of Atsushi's whining. But Atsushi began before getting cut off. I can assure you, I will be perfectly alright, Po said, leaving Atsushi to decide that maybe it would all be okay. Atsushi nodded slowly before Rumpo could chew his ear off. About 20 minutes before the group was set to head out, the president came into the office. Hello everyone, he began. I'm glad we are all here. This mission is very important and is crucial. I know we all understand that. Remember, this is one of the only times you're allowed the clearance to kill someone, and that is only to be used on Mori. Fukazawa finished, giving a smile to his members. Of course, President, they shouted, giving a bow to the man, before once again dispersing to get the last things that he needed before heading off. Kenji happily sat, smiling at his plant. Sometimes I'm really glad for you, Kenji. Yasuno shrugged, looking at the boy across from her. He looked up towards her. Huh? What do you mean, Yasuno-san? Kenji asked, confused. No matter what the situation, you're always smiling. It calms my nerves, Yasuno said, giving a smile to the boy. Kenji smiles back at her. I'm glad I can help, he said before going back to look at his plant. All right, time to roll out, Rampo exclaimed, standing up and stretching. Yep, right on schedule, Kunikita said, looking towards his watch. You know how to get to the building, Po? Dazai asked, willing to help Po get there if need be. Geez, English. No, I got it, he answered, before looking towards Rampo, awaiting his next move. Go on, let us in the book, Rampo said, looking towards Po. He nodded quickly, taking the rather small book out of his pocket before opening it. Bye, Rampo exclaimed before going into the book, the rest of the crew following shortly after him. Now, Rampo was left on his... Now Po was left on his own. He took a deep breath. You can do this, Po, he mumbled to himself, grabbing for the folder of information, which in reality had random stuff along with the book. It was meant to be the reason Po was going. Po took one last deep breath before walking out of the agency building. He held his head high, ready to complete the mission. With Chuuya at the Port Mafia building. He was sitting at his desk, not really doing much, for right now there wasn't any paperwork, so he really had nothing else to do. Chuuya, Mori said, walking towards him, Valorine following. Yes, sir? Chuuya answered, quickly turning towards him. Me and Valorine are going out for a bit. Mori shrugged. It's been too long since I got a new outfit for Elise. He pulled up a hood to hide who he really was to the outside world. He waved off Chuuya happily walking out of the room. Valorine turned towards Chuuya, worry on his face. Chuuya gave him a thumbs up, letting him know that he would be okay. Valorine nodded before walking off to with Mori. Chuuya sat there. What was he supposed to be doing something? He didn't really remember or really care at the moment. A part of the group that hadn't been in Poe's book before was shocked. Holy moly, this place is nice, Tanizaki exclaimed, impressive of how it all looked. Well, yeah, Poe writes anything Poe writes becomes true, so duh, it would look cool. Rampo shrugged, walking around the house they were placed in. It wasn't anything too grand. Poe had written it rather quickly, but it was nice. There wasn't an outside, just the inside of the house. It looked like a cabin, but obviously much bigger than your everyday one. The members of the agency spent time wandering around, taking in the beauty of Poe's writing before gathering in the main room. So now we wait? Atsushi whispered, a bit uncomfortable with how quiet it had gotten. Yeah, Dazai sighed, wanting this to be over already. Poe made his way to the Mafia building. To say his nerves weren't all over would be a lie, but he knew he would have to keep going no matter what. Poe slowly approached the building. Hello, how can I help you? The guard questioned Poe, not really expecting any visitors. I've come on behalf of Mr. Francis, Poe said, worried the guard wouldn't let him in. Before the guard could question him any further, Octagawa came up to the pair. Come on in, he said, guiding Poe. Thank you, but why? Poe asked, confused on why they were letting him in. Octagawa turned towards him. He got close to him and whispered in his ear. I'm on your side, he said, before turning back around, leading Poe towards Chuuya's office. They silently made their way towards the office. Once at the door, Octagawa knocked on it. Come in, come on in, Chuuya shouted. Octagao pushed the door open, letting Po in. Good luck, he whispered before heading off. Good morning, Mr. Nakahara. Po addressed him professionally, trying to get on his good side. Good morning, Po, correct? And you can just call me Chuuya. What can I do for you? Chuuya answered quickly, gesturing him to come towards his desk, which he quickly did. I have these for Mr. Francis, Po told him, handing over the folder. Ah, thank you. Chuuya opened the folder, only to find a book inside. A book? He opened it. Ah, shit. He didn't say shit, but I feel like that's necessary. Ah. He had a chance to scream out before being sucked into the book. Po quickly followed him into the book as well. Chuuya blinks. He looks around confused before spotting Dazai. Chibi, you made it! Dazai makes his way over to Chuuya. What's going on here? Chuuya asks. Dazai slowly wraps his arms around Chuuya, almost surprised he didn't put up any fight. Well, our last plan to come... Okay, no, let's start. Okay. Well, our last plan to come save you didn't work, so we're trying again. Yosuno shrugged, but gave a smile to the man. He smiled back at her before a frown covered his face. But what about Mori? Chuuya knew he needed to stop. Even if he was technically the boss. You do realize Yosuno has a chainsaw. And a bunch of other things, and I'm a trained assassin, right? Kyoka says, coming up to Chuuya, giving a glare to Dazai. Dazai lets out a sigh, letting go of Chuuya so Kyoka can hug him. I want a hug too, Kenji exclaims, running over towards the two of them to join them in the hug. Chuuya just smiles at the two of them. Eventually they let go, and Dazai immediately wraps his arms around Chuuya. Chuuya just rolls his eyes. Oh, and before you ask, Valorine won't be a problem. According to Dazai, he'd do anything for you, so I'm sure he's on our side. Rampo waved it off, sitting down in his chair. Po walked over to Rampo. The two smiled at each other. So, what's the plan going forward? Chuuya didn't really know what they had planned at all, so he was really curious. The plan is to get Mori The plan is to get Mori here, weaken him, leave the book, and finish him off. Kunikita said, pushing his glasses up. Chuuya nodded. He'll probably be back soon. Mori wanted to go dress shopping for Elise. Ew. Chuuya had to force himself not to gag. God, I hate that man so much. Yosuno mumbled, ready for him to finally be dead. After an hour, Mori and Valorine returned to the office. Chuuya, we're back, Valorine called out, but was shocked to see Chuuya was nowhere to be seen. Chuuya? Mori looked around for him before finding a book on his desk. Oh, and what's this? Mori picked up the book, Valorine walking over behind him. Mori opened the book, and within seconds he was sucked in too. Valorine ended up getting sucked in as well. What the? Mori said, sitting up. This is awkward, he whispered, looking around the room and seeing the members of the agency. Valorine quickly stood up and backed up, noticing Chuuya in the back, and went towards him. Chuuya, are you okay? Valorine asks, concerned about him, while also giving Dazai a glare, to which Dazai gives him one back. Ah, Valorine, Chuuya, Mori began, but was cut off by Yosuno. You're not laying your nasty hands on them. She looked down at him, holding one of her big knives in her hand. Oh, dear Yosuno, what are you planning to do with that? Mori asks, not liking the grin he got in return from the woman. Oh, it'll only hurt a little bit, Doctor, Yosuno said, walking closer to the man, putting on a mocking emphasis on the doctor part. Yosuno, along with Kyoka, spent the next 15 minutes beating the living life out of Mori. Once they felt satisfied, Poe had taken them all out of the book. Mori, while not physically hurt from all the beatings in the book, it still took a toll on his body. I hope you're ready for the final act. Yoshino laughs, pulling out her chainsaw. Within the next 10 minutes, the man named Mori was nothing more than body parts lying on the floor in a pool of blood. Well then, Kunikita said, looking at the mess in front of him. Is it over? Chuuya whispered into Dazai's ear. Chuuya couldn't bear to watch it happen. Yeah, it's over, Dazai said, letting Chuuya move to turn around. Did you have to let him bleed that much? Was Chuuya's first comment. That's going to be a mess to clean up. Chuuya lets out a sigh. He deserved it, so it's fine. Yoshino shrugged. Anyway, can we leave the cleanup to the cleanup people, right? Let's celebrate. Rampo shouted, waiting for the chill of all the craziness they had been going through. Wanting to chill after all the craziness they had been going through. Where would we even go? There's a lot of us, Tanizaki asked. I made a reservation for a restaurant this morning, Poe said, grabbing his book off the desk. Okay. Tanizaki decided it was best to not just question the two of them. Once Yoshino finished putting away her chainsaw, she turned back to Valorine. Valorine, right? You still have the bottle of poison Mori took? I'm curious as to what it is. Yeah, just a sec. Valorine walked over to grab the bottle before returning it to Yoshino. Here you go. Yoshino takes the bottle from him and looks at it, sniffing him to see if she could tell. I don't even think it was poison. I think it was some sort of drug or something that makes the body look dead. Is it alright if I keep this so I can look into it more? She asks, wanting to see what more she could find out about it. Yeah, of course. Blah blah, wanna go get sweets, let's go. Rampo yelled, wanting to get going already. I understand, Rampo, but I'm kinda covered in blood. Yoshino said, gesturing to her clothes that had Mori's blood all over them. I can find a change of clothes for you, Chuuya began. I'm sure any sign would find something that would be able to fit you. Oh, can we invite them to the food too? He asked, turning towards Dazai. Dazai looked towards Rampo and Poe. Both of them nodded their heads. Yeah, let's go get them and exchange your clothes for Yoshino, Dazai said, smiling at Chuuya. Hey, good, you're all here. Chuuya pushed open the door to Koyo's office to find the Octagawas, Hirotsu, and Koyo all together. Was there something you need, lad? Koyo asked. But before she could answer, she noticed Dazai. And what is he doing here? Not important right now. Oh, and also, do you have a pair of clothes for Yoshino could borrow? Chuuya asked, remembering that she needed a change of clothes. Koyo nodded, going to find a pair. After a few minutes, Koyo returned. Here, she handed the clothes to Yoshino. These should fit. Yoshino nodded. Thank you. After getting the clothes, Kyoko led her to the bathroom where she could change. After Yoshino was ready, the group heads out. Let's go! Rampo shouted, excited to finally have a nice treat. The group partied late into the night. Yoshino and Chuuya ended up drinking most of the night, and they definitely drank the most out of everyone. Kyoko and Kenji had a nice time sitting in the corner and talking together. After she was excited to finally meet Octagawa's younger sister, Gin, Dazai and Rampo were playing whatever games were in the arcade. Poe was sitting at a table not too far away from them watching. Kyoko, Kunikita, and Valorine talked about how much they disliked Dazai. No, not Kyoko, Koyo. Koyo, Kunikita, and Valorine talked about how much they disliked Dazai. Chuuya and the Tanizakis chatted about whatever came to mind. Hirotsu sat further away from the group, smiling to himself as he saw the enjoyment in all of their eyes. At about midnight, the crew decided it was time to pack up. I'll take Chuuya home, Annie-san. Dazai was ready to plead with Koyo, always mix those two up. Dazai was ready to plead with Koyo, but surprisingly she let him without much of a fight. Chuuya was pretty drunk and couldn't really walk, so Dazai decided to just carry him. It wasn't too far away from his apartment anyways. Once Dazai got them inside the apartment, he sat Chuuya down on the couch before going towards the bedroom. He made sure the bed wasn't too dusty, which luckily it wasn't. He made his way back to the living room, grabbed Chuuya and brought him towards the bedroom. He placed him down lightly on the table, on the bed. He placed him lightly on the bed. He went over to Chuuya's closet, grabbing some comfy clothes there, before he went to struggle with changing him. After he was done, he covered him up with the blankets. Dazai was about to leave when a tug on his wrist stopped him. "Chibi?" Dazai whispered, turning back towards the man. "Stay?" Chuuya mumbled, looking up towards Dazai. Dazai couldn't help but smile. Alright, let me change real quick." Dazai walked over to the closet, digging in the back to find the clothes he knew Chuuya still had. Once he found them, he quickly changed and walked back over towards the bed. There he found Chibi trying his best not to fall asleep. Once Dazai was back, Chuuya scooted over a little so Dazai would have room. Dazai climbed into bed. Immediately, Chuuya leaned on his chest, quickly falling asleep. "Good night, Chibi," Dazai whispered, planting a kiss on his head, eventually drifting off to sleep as well. Chapter 13. A Happy Ending. Dazai wakes up the next moment, a Chibi still asleep in his arms. He couldn't help but smile at Chuuya. Chuuya was safe. Dazai had saved him. Dazai laid next to Chuuya for a while, just watching him sleep. Chuuya slowly awoke, seeing Dazai lying next to him. "What the hell are you doing here?" Chuuya immediately sat up, not remembering much of last night. "What? The Chibi wants me to leave? He was begging me to stay last night though." Dazai grins at Chuuya, happy to see Chuuya acting like his normal self again. "Oh, whatever. I have no food here." Chuuya mumbled, looking away from Dazai. "We can go out to eat if you want." Dazai moved to sit closer to Chuuya, pulling him into a hug. I don't feel like leaving right now. We can eat later," Chuuya whispered, still looking away from Dazai. Dazai tightened his grip on Chuuya. Is something bothering you still?" he asked, worried about Chuuya. Chuuya leaned into Dazai's hug. It's just, what now?" Chuuya knew he didn't have to finish his thoughts for Dazai to understand. Dazai gave a light kiss to Chuuya's cheek. "I promise you, we'll figure that out together." Chuuya couldn't help but smile at that, but his headache had to ruin the moment. "Shit, my head." Chuuya grabbed onto his head, and the aftermath of last night finally hitting him. Dazai reached out to the nightstand beside him. "Here." Dazai handed Chuuya a glass of water and some pills that he had pulled out last time. "Thanks." Chuuya quickly took the pills, downing the whole glass of water, handing it back to Dazai. Dazai was about to ask Chuuya what else was happening in the last 3 months, but before he could ask, there was a knock on the door. "Oh, probably Nissan or Annie-san," Chuuya said quite slowly. Wow, thanks English. Slowly making his way out of the bed. "You coming?" He turned towards Dazai, who nodded, following Chuuya towards his door. "Chuuya," Valorine said, Koyo standing next to him. "Hey you two, is something wrong?" Chuuya asked before looking towards them, between the two of them. "Besides him being in your house?" Koyo started, clearing her throat afterwards. "We need to figure out what comes with the mafia now. We know it's still early, but others will try to take advantage of this." Koyo gives a smile to the boy. "Alright, let me change real quick and we can head towards the building." Chuuya invited them in, offering them to sit on the couch, while he and Dazai went to get change. Once Valorine and Koyo were alone, they both had the same thought. What does he see in Dazai? The pair turned towards each other, slightly laughing at the fact that they shared the same thought. To them, even if they weren't the biggest fans of Dazai, as long as Chuuya was happy, it didn't matter. After a few minutes, Dazai and Chuuya came out of the room arguing as always. Alright, boys, Koyo said, the two immediately shutting up. Dazai, are you coming with us? Yup, planning on sticking around for a bit. Dazai grinned at Koyo. And while she didn't like the idea of Dazai staying around, she knew he was aware of how much chaos it would be if the poor mafia fell. Oh, well, let's head out, Chuuya said, urging everyone out, still embarrassed about the way his apartment looked. Oh, Dazai won't be around for a bit. Rampo waved off a clearly angry Kunakita. What? He can't just not show up? Kunakita was not excited about Dazai planning to not come to work less than he already does. However, before he could complain much more, the president walked out. Kunakita, I understand your concern, but Dazai spoke to me and I'm allowing him this time away. I assume you will accept that? Fukuzawa said. Kunakita, a bit shocked, quickly bows. Of course, sir. My apologies. Kunakita quickly returns back to his desk. I guess we'll have to work extra hard. After saying that, Kunakita got right back to work. Not like Dazai did much anyway, Kyoka mumbled, clearly still thinking about Chuuya. Concerned more than she ever thought she could be. So, what's the plan? Chuuya asked, looking towards Chuuya and Valorine. Chuuya and Valorine exchanged a glance. Koyo spoke first. That depends on you, lad. Noticing the younger's confusion, she continued. The choice is yours. You can leave the mafia, or become the true boss of the mafia. Chuuya's eyes widened in shock. Me? Become the real boss? Chuuya whispered, almost in disbelief of that suggestion. You're strong and smart, lad. You care about your underlings. Who would be better than you? Koyo and Valorine smiled at Chuuya. Dazai grabbed on Chuuya's hand, drawing his attention. Wow, thank you, phone. I always forget to put it on mute. Damn Reddit. Anyway. Dazai grabbed onto Chuuya's hand, drawing his attention. No one's more qualified than you. You got this. Chuuya couldn't help but smile at the three around him. Alright. Only if you guys help me. Yes, that includes you too, Dazai. Chuuya said, rolling his eyes at Dazai's excitement to help. The four walked into the building. Chuuya took a deep breath. Maybe members of the mafia were waiting around to see what order to meet next. Go on, lad, you got this. Koyo smiled at him, pushing him towards the front of the crowd. Chuuya looked at the people. Chuuya looked at the people in front of him. He took another breath before speaking. Good morning, all of you. He started, being met with a wave of good mornings back. He couldn't help but let out a small laugh before continuing. As you know, I've been in control of the mafia for the past 3 months. While we have been trying to keep it under... While we have been trying to keep me being the new boss under wraps, it's not going to be that way anymore. For now, I want to focus on us getting back to where we were by not lying low. Chuuya took another pause, waiting for the crowd's reaction. Dazai quickly pushed Valorine towards Chuuya, giving him a thumbs up as the older looked back at him. Chuuya looked towards Valorine, knowing exactly what he wanted to say next. I don't think it's something that's ever been done in the history of the Port Mafia, but if he's willing to let it be, if he's willing to do it, Chuuya paused, holding out his hand towards Valorine. I would like to make us. I would like to make us have 2 bosses. I think it would be more. Would be able to function even more efficiently. Chuuya said, looking towards Valorine before looking back towards the crowd. Many of them were very shocked, never even having the thought of this being a possibility. Before many of them could hold more doubts, Darzai ran up. Chibi, this is a brilliant idea. See, I knew that Chibi-sized brain of yours could work. Darzai practically jumped on top of Chuuya. Chuuya just rolled his eyes. Many of the members were shocked, to say the least. Those who knew and remembered Darzai were not expecting to see him, especially not jumping onto the new mafia boss. Okay, get off of me, Chuuya said, lightly pushing the man off of him before turning back to the crowd. Thank you all for coming today. I hope you can all accept this switch and we can work together to push towards a new future for the Port Mafia. Chuuya excited the crowd, giving a quick bow before waving towards everyone. The members couldn't help but cheer. While they might not totally be sure about the plan, they all trusted Chuuya's judgment. After quite a few minutes of cheering, the crowd decided to clear out. That was definitely an unexpected plan, Chuuya giggled, bringing her hand up to her mouth. Tell me about it, Valorine sighed, seeming annoyed but also happy. I didn't really know what else to do, so Chuuya just shrugged. He knew it might not be the best, but at least it worked for now, right? Meh, I think it will work better than you expect, Darzai hummed, before quickly changing the subject. Let's go throw away all of Mori's crap. Darzai practically jumped over to where the elevator was to get to the office. Chuuya followed behind. Hey, you can't just throw all of it away. We might need some of it. In response, Darzai just stuck his tongue out at him. Chuuya watched the two's interaction. Watching the interaction, she couldn't help but smile. Ah yes, those two, they never change, even after all these years. Valorine turns towards her. Shall we make our way up as well? Curve some of the damage? Valorine started walking towards the elevator. I suppose we shall. Chuuya followed, both stepping into the elevator together. And we don't need this or this. Darzai started pitching anything and everything. Darzai, you stupid mackerel. Stop throwing everything out. Mori might have some important documents in there. Chuuya was about to keep yelling before Darzai turned around to him, shushing him. Don't worry, Chibi. I know what's important and what's not. I promise nothing important will be tossed, okay? Darzai gave a light smile to Chuuya. Chuuya rolled his eyes, but couldn't help melting inside. Whatever, Chuuya sighed, going to the other side of the desk to look for more items to remove. You two need any help? Chuuya said, smiling at the two boys. I mean, if you wanted to help throw all this crap away, that would be nice. Chuuya shrugged, sighing at the amount of random shit there was in his office. Of course, lad. Chuuya walked over to Chuuya, helping him clean. After about 2 hours of cleaning, almost everything Mori had owned was gone. Woo! Darzai stretched, tired from all the work. Well, time to sleep now. Don't you still have to go into work? Chuuya spoke, rolling his eyes at Darzai's demeanor. Do I have to? I mean, I'm sure we'll be fine. Before Darzai could complain even more, Chuuya spoke. Lads, why don't you both go to Darzai's work? Then let them know the new plan, yes? Chuuya spoke in a tone that both boys knew they couldn't fight against. Okay, Annie-san. Chuuya mumbled, walking towards the door, Darzai grumbling beside him. Just what are we going to do with those two? Valorine asks, trying his best not to laugh, trying to keep his laugh back. I've been trying to figure out what to do with them for the past 7 years. Tell me if you find something. Chuuya laughed, Valorine laughing along with her. Well, I think there's a ton of paperwork. Valorine turned towards the desk, sighing but still wanting to help out Chuuya. Koyo placed a hand on Valorine's back. Don't worry, we can work together on it. It's the least we can do for them. Valorine nodded to her words, the two of them going through the rest of the papers, filing it out and filling out what they could. Hey idiot, Chuuya mumbled, looking away from Dazai. Does the slug need something? Dazai had a grin on his face as he awaited Chuuya's response. Thanks for helping me, I guess. Chuuya's expressed annoyance at the smile Dazai's face immediately took. My dog is thankful? Oh, it's okay, Chibi. What owner would I be if I didn't? Dazai shrugged it off as if it wasn't a big deal. Chuuya just rolled his eyes, somewhat glad Dazai didn't tease him too much. The two made their way towards the agency building. Once at the door, Dazai pushed it open. Good morning, he shouted as he walked through the door, Chuuya shaking his head behind him. The day is practically over. Don't waste time saying good morning. Kunikita immediately started yelling at him. Whoa, I was helping out the chibi. Dazai quickly mumbled, moving out the way so they could see Chuuya before Kunikita could get more upset. Chuni! Kyoko ran over and gave him a quick hug. What are you doing here? Hi, Kyoko. Ani-san sent us here to let you know about the plan for the mafia. Chuuya patted the girl on the head before she nodded and walked back over towards Atsushi. Nakahara-san. The president stepped out of his office. Rampo peeking around him. Fukazawa-san, please just call me Chuuya. Chuuya smiled at the older man. Of course, my apologies. My apologies, Chuuya-san. Now, you said you came up with a plan for the mafia going forward you wish to share? Fukazawa wanted to make sure that Chuuya was 100% sure about sharing the information. Yes, I think you all are not only owed the information for helping me, but also as our allies. The plan is from me and Valorine, which some of you kind of met to run the mafia together. We discussed some of... Was that a damn plane? Or just a really loud motorcycle? That hasn't happened in ages. Okay. The plan is for me and Valorine, which some of you kind of met, to run the mafia together. We already discussed with the other members and they seemed to like the idea. Chuuya announced to Fukazawa, who nodded along. That sounds like an excellent idea. Please let us know if you ever need our help. Fukazawa said, holding out his hand for Chuuya to shake. Chuuya shook his hand. Thank you, Fukazawa-san. And if you excuse me, I have some matters to attend to. I'll see you all around. Chuuya thanked before leaving the agency. Ha! He left you here. Now you gotta do work. Rampo laughed at Dazai, who Chuuya had left behind when he ran off. Whatever. Dazai went to sit down at his desk, attempting to do some of his work. Over the next month, Chuuya and Valorine had been working very hard to improve the mafia. Their first order of business was establishing new executives, which they promoted both Okutagawa and Tachihara. Both boys were shocked, but Tachihara definitely more than Okutagawa. Chuuya decided to actually reach out to Francis and make a real business plans together. They had talked about it before, like how they talked about it before, to help each other out when the situation comes to. It's quite lovely to actually be able to have an actual agreement. It's quite lovely to be able to have an actual agreement together. I will say, your wine is amazing. Francis laughed. Him and Chuuya sat next to the windows in the office. It is nice, and thank you. I enjoy collecting wine. Chuuya and Francis talked and continued to drink together for the next few hours. After a few hours, Francis got up, stretching. It's been quite a few hours now. I should return. Thank you for having me. Francis held out his hand for a hand to shake. Chuuya quickly shook his hand. Thank you for coming. I'll see you around. Chuuya waved Francis off as he headed towards the door. Till next time. Francis pretty much leapt out of the door. Lad? Chuuya stepped into the room as Francis was gone. Annie-san, is everything alright? Chuuya walked over towards her, worry written on his face. Yes, I just had a question, if you don't mind. Chuuya put a hand on Chuuya's shoulder. What do we plan to do with Q? Oh, well, I think we can help them. Make their life a little better. Chuuya shrugged, walking towards the desk to grab a key. Shall we go visit them? Alright, let's go. Chuuya nodded, the pair walking towards where Q was saying. Knock knock. Q? It's me, Chuuya. Can I come in? Chuuya asked with a nice tone, not wanting to scare the kid. Q's eyes lit up. Yeah. Q would never admit it, but they were a big fan of Chuuya. But could you blame them? Who wouldn't be? Chuuya gently pushed the door open. Want to come out? Want to come on out? Chuuya reached a hand out for Chuuya. Chuuya reached a hand out. Q took it gently. Let's get you cleaned up. Chuuya smiled, walking with Q over to the infirmary. Chuuya? Q asked, confused as Chuuya started to remove the blades from their arms. Chuuya hummed to let Q know that he was listening. What are you doing? Won't Mori be mad? Q asked, unaware of anything that had happened over the past 4 months. You don't have to worry about that anymore, okay? He's gone now. Chuuya smiled up at the kid, who smiled back, happy that the monster was gone. I'm glad he's gone. Will I still be kept in that room? Q asked hesitantly, worried that they still might be treated the same. No, he'll be able to move more freely, okay? I promise. Q couldn't help but start crying. Thank you, Chuuya. Q sniffled. Chuuya gave Q a hug. Of course, Chuuya paused, fixing the last bandage. And all done. Chuuya stood, smiling at Q. Q smiled, excited for the chance of a new chapter of life. When Chuuya returned home that night, Dazai was waiting for him. Hey, Dazai mumbled, clearly not the happiest. Is everything alright? Chuuya asked, concerned about his partner. Annie-san called me. Why are you helping Q? You know how dangerous that kid is, don't you? Dazai looked towards Chuuya, obviously upset at his decision. Dazai, I know how you feel about the kid, but we should give them a chance, please. Chuuya whispered, pleading with his eyes. Before Dazai could start, Dazai started before getting cut off by Chuuya. Dazai, the kid deserves a chance. I'm going to give it to them. Chuuya shouted, annoyed that Dazai wasn't listening. Dazai was quiet for a few minutes before grabbing Chuuya's hand. Alright, we can give them a chance, but I'm still hesitant. Thank you, Dazai. Chuuya smiled, pausing for a bit before speaking up again. Want crab for dinner? Chuuya asks, hunger finally hitting him. I was thinking we could go out? Dazai suggested, face ever so slightly flushed. Huh? What you mean? I mean, we can. It's just you're not typically the type. Chuuya turned towards Dazai, obviously confused about his request. I think it would be fun. Dazai smiled, excited that Chuuya agreed. Yeah, I'm gonna take a shower. Then you're taking one too. Chuuya stuck out his tongue, walking towards the bathroom. What? Dazai was about to protest more before Chuuya shouted. Nope, you're not getting out of this one. Chuuya disappeared into the bathroom. Dazai sighed loudly before placing his head on the table. After about 30 minutes, Chuuya walked out of the bathroom fully dressed. Your turn, idiot, Chuuya said, pushing Dazai towards the bathroom. Fine, Dazai grumbled, walking into the bathroom. After about 10 minutes, Dazai was out of the shower and getting dressed. Dazai didn't know what Chuuya was doing, but he was clearly being loud with whatever it was. After about 10 minutes... After about another 10 minutes, Chuuya called out, Dazai, hurry up! Chuuya shouted from the front room, waiting for Dazai to finish getting ready. Yeah. Dazai shouted back, reaching into a hidden drawer. Inside the drawer was a single box. Dazai pulled it out the drawer and opened it with one last time. He smiled, looking at the beautiful ring with a red stone and a red stone and a blue stone. He closed the box and slipped it into his pocket. Finally, ready to go? Chuuya sighed, seeing Dazai walk into the main room. Yeah, let's go. Dazai smiled, taking Chuuya's hand in his own. The two happily walked out of the house.